Hello and welcome to All the Way Down, episode 7. I'm Dash, this is Nox. How are you doing?
I'm Nux. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm very good, actually. I've been doing well.
It's good to hear.
Yeah. To continue last week's topic, last week we talked a whole bunch about, like, what are our favorite controllers and all that, and I don't know, we had some things that we agreed on, but we avoided talking about, like, the dumb and wacky controllers, you know, for the sake of, like, keeping it simple for now.
We talked about the N64.
Well, it's funny you always got to bring up Nintendo because like one thing that I was avoiding talking about really was the Wii and the Wii U because they're like as far as the main big companies and their standard what do you call it? Like the main controller, the standard issue controller that they send out with their mainline systems. Nintendo's had a history of being real wacky with it. Well, only a recent history though, as far as like starting with the Wii, really, you know. Like the N64 was kind of wacky, but we talked about how like it was the right move at the time and like it makes sense if you think about it, you know.
Yep.
And then the GameCube's a little wacky, but it's less. But then there's the Wii. And yeah, that's when shit got kind of weird with Nintendo.
Do you want to start with the Wii?
I guess, dude. I remember when so the Wii was a big deal for me. We kind of talked about this on like episode 1 already, where that was the system that came out at the time where it was the first time that I had a job when a new system was coming out. And so I was able to purchase a new video game system the day it came out, you know? Besides Xbox 360, because I didn't care about that. I was waiting for the Wii. But I remember when they very, very first showed the Wii remote, I was like, oh no. Like my heart sank into my stomach. I was like, oh god, this isn't going to be a video game system. And I was really worried about it. But then they had that reveal trailer, you know, where they showed like the people hammering with it and they showed like all the different motion controls kind of stuff. And no one was sick of motion controls at this time. Basically, it was like, you know, motion controls weren't even a thing yet. So it was really a case of like, I saw that the controller was remote shaped and I didn't consider any of the possible cool things that could be out of that. I just thought, oh, for some reason it's shaped like a remote, you know? But then they showed the trailer that was like, hey, this thing points at the TV, so like shooty games are going to be cool. Hey, this thing is motion controlled and here's all the things we can do with that. And then instantly I was psyched, you know? It completely 180'd me. And I was 16 or 17, right? So I was easily swayed by their fancy trailer for it.
Yeah, I actually didn't get into the Wii until mid-late era, probably like mid-late-ish. Mostly because I've said this before, but I skipped the kind of PS3, Xbox 360 generation for the most part until Mortal Kombat 9 reeled me in with the PS3. So I got into the Wii thinking, well, fuck the 360. I don't like that. PS3, whatever. I have one, and then all of a sudden on Craigslist there's a Wii for $40 with like 2 games and 2 Wiimotes with the motion control stuff and everything. There's like $40. It's like I can't say no to that. So I went and grabbed it, and I had fun with a couple titles. And this is actually after my experience with Smash Bros. Brawl. So I was already kind of like, I wasn't surprised by how much I liked the Wii. I was just so happy with the way it worked when I found that Wiimote. Like, I think I remember before it came out the rumors of like, Nintendo's doing this weird remote controller thingy. And yeah, like you said, it wasn't quite explained yet that it was going to point at the TV, that there was a motion sensor. It was all just, what the fuck is that thing? And then it wasn't even like the showcase of like the Wii Sports and Resort stuff that, you know, they got to sell the console. None of that really did anything for me, although it is very fun. My friend Tyler brought over his Wii. and at our house, and we played. I think it was Resort for like 3 hours. It was fantastic.
Oh,
But the motion control plus that they added, I think, for the more advanced kind of Wii Resort stuff, that later on became the second revision of the Wiimote when they had, like, I think it was when Twilight Princess came out and they needed that more intricate motor and gyroscopic stuff, control data. They needed that for that game.
Skyward Sword.
So it might have been Skyward Sword. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But it was the first time that they had released new Wiimotes with that were like longer, so you didn't need the like add-on thing at the bottom. And I think there were special editions, like there were gold Legend of Zelda Wiimotes. But yeah, it's like as soon as I played
red
that
one that came with New Super
with
Mario
Mario,
Bros.
yeah. I actually think I might have one of those.
I think I do, or I definitely do. It's Nicole's, but
Yeah, but when I, it's so weird when you look at it. But just like the N64 controller, everything makes sense as soon as it falls in your hands. You play Brawl, and it's like this is it's the most ergonomic controller I think you can actually come up with, because my hands are now resting at my sides, at my lap when I'm sitting on a couch, and I'm just like losing a Smash Bros. Brawl match. Like. I was like, this is so weird, but so fucking relaxed, and it's so fun. And even though, just like the GameCube, there's like the A and B or 1 and 2 buttons with the big A button. It's like there's so few buttons, but it all pulls together remarkably well. It's very simple. Like that's kind of why I'm not a huge Smash Bros. Fan, because the controls felt simple with the Wiimote. But like the fact that it worked at all is actually amazing to me.
Yeah, I'm a little half and half on it. First, though, remember when we're talking about like the reveal of the Wii and its controller and all that. Back then, it was called the Revolution. That was like the code name. Remember that shit?
I do.
And-
Yep.
and then they revealed that it was, hey, it's gonna actually be called Wii, and everyone was like, "Oh, Wii, that's
What the
so
fuck is
dumb.
that?
They should have called it. They should have just called it the Revolution." But like, can you imagine if it was nowadays and we were talking
Yeah.
about this Nintendo system and it was called the Revolution and we're still saying that name? It would sound so like pompous and ridiculous. But anyway, so I agree that like the Wii Remote is super comfortable. Like it fits in your hand super, super well. It's got the A button in just the right place, all that kind of stuff. Just like the N64 controller with the analog stick, also like with the nunchuck, like everything is in the right place. But I do have a couple gripes with the Wii Remote, which is that like I'm not into motion control still. Really, and like aiming at the TV for things, I don't know. It's fine, but I feel like I'd rather just use a regular controller. So like when there's a game like Xenoblade Chronicles or something that allows you to use the classic controller the whole time, like I'm gonna do that every time. Or like for Brawl, I'm one of those people who like the first Smash Bros game that I got into was Melee, so I have to play Smash Bros with the GameCube controller all the time,
Can I just say, cool as shit. Cool as fucking shit that Nintendo put GameCube controller ports on top of the Wii. What other system puts older ports on their newer system, which does not, interface? Obviously, the Wiimotes are wireless, but you know what I mean. Like they seem to take the idea that we're going to have a completely wireless controller, but we could still have so much peripheral access and backwards compatibility with just by putting GameCube ports on top. And they put fucking 4 of them up there, man, with 2 memory card slots.
It's the whole suite. 2 memory card slots and everything. Exactly. But yeah, the thing with like when you're playing like Metroid Other M, in that game, it has you. Okay, first of all, the other genius thing about the Wii Remote is the way that when you turn it sideways, and now it's like an NES controller layout. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
love that.
That was like mind blowing when they first revealed that. And then of course it makes more sense when it works with the NES Virtual Console, you know. So yeah, like the Wii Remote looks really weird when you first see it, right? But then you actually hold it and it's like, okay, this thing is actually really comfortable. And then you turn it sideways and oh my god, it's like a sideways controller. That's really cool too. My only issues with it are just that like I'm over motion controls for the most part and that kind of thing. And so it's like, eh. You know what though? Maybe I shouldn't speak too soon about that because I have actually never played a Motion Plus game. I've never
Whoa.
played Wii Sports Resort. I've only played
What?
Wii Sports. And Skyward Sword is one of the only it's one of the only Zelda games I haven't played. I think like the Conduit 2, I think used Motion Plus. The Conduit 2, I want to say, maybe even the first game did this, but I think it was just the second one. That was one of the pointy shooty games, but they were able to use the Motion Plus to make it so that if you aimed outside of the screen, it still knew where you were aiming because the
Oh.
motion tracking was so good,
Yeah,
you know?
cool.
So yeah, like stuff like that. But, you know, so maybe I would like it a little bit more if I played one of those games. I'd appreciate it a little bit more.
That's a cool use of the technology I didn't even think about. Because what I was gonna say was the thing with the Wii was they kind of brought light gun gaming into the era in which it was dying because of just technologically speaking, you know, LCD TVs were starting to become the norm. They made it so you didn't really miss it. I wouldn't ever say it's as good as like, well, really depends on the game and how it's programmed, but I feel like the Wii's motion controls when it came to like shooting style stuff felt like there was a good bit of lag there. Like it felt like I was actually hosing my enemies down with a garden hose rather than
Okay,
actually
yeah.
shooting them, you know? Like that's how the
Yeah.
aim felt.
The other kind of issue with light gun stuff on Wii is that they have to put a reticle on screen because
Hmm.
it's not actually aiming at the TV, it's just tracking IR, you know? And so like to me, like I did play a lot of that one Resident Evil game, the Umbrella Chronicles, you know, the like rail shooter Resident
I
Evil
didn't
game.
see that one, no.
I did play a lot of that game, but overall though, I'm you know, I don't know if I want to play light gun games where there's a reticle on screen. I'd much rather it, you know, be the other kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
pretty annoying if you go to if you're lucky enough to have a movie theater that has arcade games around you right now. You can find those like those new Terminator arcade games, and it's like the classic. You hold the machine gun or whatever, but man, that just slow reticle right in the way of all the action on the screen is just such a bummer. I can feel that.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so overall what I kind of get out of the Wii is that like the controller is really comfortable. I just sometimes I feel like it doesn't have enough buttons on it is one
Mm.
thing, like or at least not enough buttons with immediate access. And then the other thing is like because of the little bit of motion controls and that kind of thing. Um Sometimes it's like, man, I'd like to play Mario Galaxy again, but I don't want to fucking whip the controller every time I want to make Mario spin, you know? It's just a
Yeah,
pain.
I could see
Uh,
that being annoying.
yeah, it's not like a laziness thing. It's more like I'm so concerned about things like input lag and all that that like just having there be a control method where I can't like feel the moment of impact for me putting in the input, you know, I'm not
Yeah,
really into, you
you
know.
need the tactile feedback of the controller to let you know you confirmed.
Right, yeah. And so, you know, you don't get that with the waggle and stuff. And so, yeah, Mario Galaxy is still a great game. It's just that, you know, maybe I'd play it more if you could play it with the classic controller. Um
Can can I pull one out of left field here, or did you have something else? Sorry.
I was just going to move right on to Wii U, but
Oh,
what do you got?
we can talk about Wii U for a second too, just because it's related.
Well, Wii U is where I totally drop off cuz like
Mm.
I've got some love for the Wii remote, but the gamepad I'm not into like at all. It's just like way too big with your hands feeling like they're a foot apart. The
Feels
analog
like what I was. It feels like what I thought a Game Gear was like.
Oh yeah. I mean, the one thing that I'll say very positive about the gamepad is that the D-pad is pretty solid. It feels good. And like the A, B, X, Y buttons are generally pretty good feeling on those as well. Well, you've got like a weird thing on it,
I
so
got the condom on it.
yeah, so where do you I don't like that idea of like you gotta rest your like the knuckle of my thumb is very important for me. Where for you it's gonna be like resting on the silicone, and then so the buttons get pressed in deeper than where your thumb is resting.
No, they're totally cut out. Like the whole area is as if you didn't have it on at all. It's pretty comfy
Yeah?
actually.
Okay. It looks a little close, but I'll take your word for it. But okay,
There you
okay,
go.
okay, okay.
I mean, listen, you definitely feel it, and I do not like the actual feel of silicone in my hands, especially the material like this, where it's just gonna just pick up dust and just not let it go.
Well then rip that bitch off, dude.
Well, I want to protect the one thing of this that is gonna see a lot of like motion and shit, you know?
Yeah, it's one of those things though where it's like, is it worth protecting it if it means that you never used it to its full pleasure ability?
I
You know
don't
what I
want to
mean?
find the pleasurability of the silicone
It's like,
condom on my Wii.
it's like you can either enjoy it 100% and maybe it'll get, maybe there'll be an accident someday, or you can enjoy. Boy, this really sounds like I'm talking about something else, but or you can have the cover on it and it feels 50% as good to use, but you can use it all you want.
Here's
Uh,
my game plan. I maybe play Wii U games once every 3 months. If I get into a series or play a game that I have to come back to the Wii U on, I'm ripping the bitch off and not putting it back on, probably. If I have to use it
gotcha.
a lot, yeah.
But yeah, like my other issues though is I feel like the battery life on the gamepad isn't very good also, but that's because that might be because I got mine used, and who knows if the previous owner didn't take care of it or even swapped it out with something shitty. I haven't looked. But the other thing about it though is that the Wii U marks the era. Actually no, did the Wii do this? I always had Rumble turned off on the Wii. But on the Wii U, I felt like that was when I first noticed that Rumble was starting to become vibrate.
Mm,
Like it started to become a cell phone vibration instead of like a nice chunky rumble. And it made this
yeah.
noise. Like every time that the gamepad was rumbling, it was like, and it just, I hated it.
This
Hated it.
that's the Wii U gamepad specifically.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed
So
that yet, actually.
maybe it's because I got mine used. Who knows? But luckily the Wii U does have the Pro controller, which solves a lot of the issues. But that's a weird thing for me, is that Nintendo makes a system. They say this is the controller that's in the box, right? It's the gamepad. But if you're a pro, then you got to get this other thing. The gamepad that we packaged with the system, that's for casuals. That's for idiots. If you're a pro, you're going to get the pro controller. I think that that's weird to have the pro controller be sold separate. But anyway, that
I agree. I've
the
never been a fan of
messaging
that.
the messaging is just kind of weird for on that for me.
Yeah.
But
So, well, hang on. So I'm gonna say that this is weird too, because you brought up the Pro controller. I will say this. I have one here. It, as far as I can feel, is definitely aimed at the more like PS2 kind of fan like crowd. Well, PS4 rather, PS3, PS4. It's got more of that shape, I would say, with the handle grips of kind of like an Xbox.
I was gonna
Um,
say, I feel like the whole controller itself feels almost exactly like a 360 controller. The shape of it.
I think the shape of it looks like that, but it feels a little bit more like PlayStation to me. Just because it's weird. It's hard to explain without having all of them here together. But the one gripe I have about this, and I do like the way it feels.
So we're talking about the Pro controller for
We're
the
we're
Wii U
not
now.
talking
Yeah.
about the Wii U Pro controller.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Imagine the Switch Pro controller, except the D-pad and the left movement stick are switched.
Other
So
way around.
yeah, Well, yes,
As
exactly.
in the D-pad and the left analog stick are in the same spot as the Switch Pro controller. It's the face buttons and the
Yes.
right stick that are
Sorry.
swapped.
Yes, the
Yeah,
face buttons and the right stick.
so both the sticks are in the higher primary position, and then the D-pad and the face buttons are in the lower position. Yeah, it's kind
Can't
of
stand it.
weird.
Can't stand it at all.
Yeah, it's weird. I do not prefer it for sure. It's not what I would ask for, but you know, I played through a couple Wii U games with it and got mostly used to it, and it was fine, you know. But yeah, like one thing was I want to say for Super Mario 3D World, you can use Y and B for your run and jump as you would expect, but you can also use X and A, which because the face buttons are down and left from where they would normally be, you can use the higher buttons, and that kind of feels a little bit better. It's like closer to where you would expect it, you know?
I
So
can see that.
That at least felt better for that game. But yeah, for the most part, though, I don't love where the face buttons are on that controller, but it's fine. But yeah, I like that the Switch Pro controller, they went away from that design. And then
It's
also
so
they made
much
the face
better.
buttons a little bit better, or a little bit bigger, too.
Bigger,
which is
yeah.
nice. But all right, what's your wild and wacky controller that you're talking about? I'm not a fan of the Wii U gamepad. That's the whole point. I got one more thing to say about the gamepad, though. Remember when the GameCube had the Game Boy player and it was awesome? Why didn't the Wii U have a DS player?
My God.
You've got a second screen that's a touch screen in your hands. It would be perfect to play DS games with your main screen on the TV and the bottom screen on your gamepad.
I've never actually given that any consideration before. That's a great point. I want to say, real pickle. Yeah, I mean, it's got to just be the fact that the DS's top screen is like what, not even like 360p. It's not a high resolution.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that didn't matter for the Game Boy player, which had the same problem, but that was back when most people were still playing on a CRT. So yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing though. Yes, that you are correct. However, they did do a DS Virtual Console on the Wii U, so you could play DS games on the Wii U, and they weren't concerned about the chunky pixels, you know?
Did they have both screens though?
Yeah, it was top screen on the TV, bottom screen on your gamepad, or it was
so they actually did do it like that.
Yeah.
What the fuck then?
Yeah, it was a little customizable even. You could flip the screens, you could have both of them on your TV, you know, there were plenty of options. Totally. They should have just made a DS player, but who knows? Maybe it was that the Wii U just didn't sell well enough to justify this like huge accessory for it.
Yeah.
Or B, they wanted to sell you virtual console games instead.
Dude, okay, I don't think I buy either one of those because I think saying, "Hey, here's this thing that you can now play DS games on your TV and your gamepad in your hand and your home." I think that could have fucking saved the Wii U, actually. I think that might have sold it pretty well. I don't think it's worth the virtual console. I mean, Nintendo has made some stupid decisions before, but I mean, who hasn't?
No, yeah. I do agree. I think that if there was a DS player for the Wii U, that would sell a lot of Wii U's. Totally.
Because god damn it, the DS is not only just the DS, but the 3DS is huge. If you could have 3DS and DS emulation via a peripheral that lets you play shit in the Wii U, dude, that probably would have made the Wii U sell so damn well.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah,
especially if you bundled it.
It's always been weird to me that they never did that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you interjected with that because I've never even thought of that. I didn't even know about how the virtual console worked with the gamepad and your TV. No clue. That's Wii U virtual console, so it'd have to work like that. It's not Wii virtual console.
I had kind of a funny thing with that where I got a modded 3DS to be able to capture it, you know, for streaming. And I played through Metroid Prime Hunters. And I was like, man, this looks pretty good, but it kind of looks shitty also. I had this issue where the 3DS embiggens the picture a little bit because the 3DS's screen is bigger than the DS's screen,
Mm-hmm.
or at the very least, it has more pixels.
Yeah.
So it embiggens the DS graphics to fill up the whole thing, but it does like a little bit of bilinear filtering or whatever filtering it is on there. And so it's a little blurry, And then I got Metroid Prime Hunters, I think, yeah, it was that, on the Wii U Virtual Console, and I was like, whoa, the graphics look so much better with these nice, clean, razor-sharp pixels. And then I only learned later, hey, guess what? If you want to play DS games on your 3DS, if you hold the start button while you boot the game, it boots the game in the original DS's resolution
Hmm.
without making it larger, and so it's pixel perfect, and oh my god, it looks so much better. Like, yeah,
Nice.
you've got some black bars around it, because the screen's a tiny bit smaller, but after 5 minutes, you don't even see them anymore, and you're enjoying much better looking pixel art. So there's a
Hmm.
tip for you if you didn't know.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, my wild and wacky out of left field controller I was going to bring up was actually something I've never tried. I was going to ask you, maybe you can answer after this, but there's always been a weird controller that I've wanted to try so fucking bad, and they're hard to find because I want to say they might even be exclusive. Have you ever seen for the PS1 the Namco NEG-Con controller?
NEG-Con? No, I've never even heard of it, I don't think.
Or NE or NegCon. I have no clue how you actually pronounce it. I think it came out it was kind of early in the PS1's lifespan. The whole kind of gimmick was that they wanted to make a controller that you can alternate it. If I'm talking on my ass again because I haven't tried it, but the idea is to control a value, like an analog value, with instead of using a stick, the controller is kind of bisected in half, and you actually
Oh,
twist both sides of it while you're controlling it.
I
And
actually have
apparently,
seen that.
I think they made that for Ridge Racer. I want to say.
Yeah, that I mean that's what I first thought when I saw it was that looks like it's made for a racing game. Yeah, you twist the controller and that must translate to like analog stick left and right.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw similarly, I saw a controller once where the left analog stick was replaced by like a rolling wheel kind of thing. And there was some other detail about it also that made it seem really racing gamey, but it was like the same thing where
Are you
the
talking about? There was like an arcade mod I saw on Twitter the other day. It was pretty cool. Is that what you're talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I saw this a long time ago,
Oh,
so
okay, never
yeah, I
mind.
don't know. But it was like you're talking about it's a handheld PlayStation controller that looks totally normal. Well, normal as in the shape of it, except that instead of a left stick, it had like this like slider or roller kind of wheel thing.
Was it also a Namco controller?
Probably, I don't know.
Did it kind of have that shape of a Virtual Boy controller with a big
Um,
weird tire in the middle? I'm seeing that actually in a Google
Not
image
that
result.
one.
It's called the
Yeah,
JogCon.
not that one
Not that
either.
one. Okay.
But yeah, just a weird control. Like, hey, if I get it. If you play a lot of racing games,
Mm-hmm.
your that analog stick might be a little like not accurate enough.
Yeah.
I've always kind of wanted to play a racing game with like the full 900-degree steering wheel.
Mm. I actually have. It's not as glamorous unless we're talking about a different one here. But like the reason I'm kind of like attracted to the Namco NEG Con, whatever you call it, is not even so much yes for racing games, but like I'd love to experiment with other kinds of racing games and other kinds of general games. Like if you think about the way that you're rotating each side of that, it's a lot actually closer to how you would control a motorcycle than you would with an analog stick.
Oh yeah, yeah.
it would simulate like a lean event in your hands, and
Mhm.
I think that would translate into a MotoGP game pretty well. Um, Stuff like that in general. But like, what the hell would it do in a fishing game? You know, what would it do in a
Right.
beat 'em up? What would it do in a shooter? You know, I have no clue what you could do with that. Maybe you could play a fighting game with it, and like you change, like you program a little memory in PCB. It's like to accept the left analog value as like heavy punch, and the right analog value as heavy kick or something. And you're just doing this playing Street Fighter or something. That'd be funny as shit.
Yeah, I feel like it's no different than like playing a game with a Guitar Hero guitar or a dance pad or
Yeah.
something where like, yeah, technically because the buttons are mapped in this way, it's possible, but
Hmm.
it's not what it's designed for, so it's going to be a novelty at best.
Is there a super weird controller that you've seen that you've really wanted to try?
The Virtual Boy controller because it
Hmm.
has two D-pads on it. It's got a
It,
D-pad on both sides.
have
I
you
just
used
it
it?
No, I've never played a Virtual Boy. I would like to try it, Like everyone shits on the Virtual Boy because like okay, it is absolutely like asinine that you would release a 32-bit system that can only produce four different shades of one color, you know?
Hmm.
Like yeah, like and not only that, but that it's like searing red is the color that it produces, you know?
Yeah.
Like yeah, you hear that and it's like what the fuck were they thinking, you know? But
Yeah,
I bet
using red
I
as
bet
like
the
your background or backdrop to any like a searing red, it can really hurt your eyeballs after a while. I don't know why anyone would use that.
but yeah, like I would still I bet a couple of the games are still pretty good on it, There's that
They are.
Wario game that's probably pretty cool. There's like a tennis game, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, so
the thing a lot of people don't know about Virtual Boy is that it's 3D, like
yep,
actual stereoscopic 3D.
like you
Like
don't need glasses. Like you just put the visor on and then it's 3D. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I'll tell you what though. I well, we can talk about the Virtual Boy controller for a second too. I have maybe 15 solid minutes of experience with the Virtual Boy. Because shout out to my local retro gaming store, Dawnstar Video Games here in Richmond. They got one in, and I just fucking rep for them so much because they're just a really good company, great people, and everything. And they let me try the Virtual Boy in like a couple days after they got it in. Just so you know, the price tag of that thing is like $400, and the base station that holds this heavy ass visor is broken. They're very commonly broken, but they had some mess of super glue on only one side. It was sketchy, so I didn't want to play it too long because I don't want to break it. You buy it that situation. I mean, I'd love a Virtual Boy, but not for $400 and for
yeah,
broken.
not a broken one, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here, getting my retinas seared like tuna steaks, just looking at Mario Tennis, having the time of my life, and simultaneously like, okay, so background about me. I love like heights. I want to go skydiving. I'm not like grossed out by motion sickness generally. I don't get seasick. 10 minutes, 15 minutes I want to say of the Virtual Boy did not make me sick, but you know how you remember those magic eye paintings you have to unfocus and cross your eyes to look
Oh
at?
yeah, I love those.
Yeah, imagine looking at those and seeing the shape, except that shape is now moving and you're tracking something and you have to follow that image without unfocusing your eyes. Or focusing your eyes rather. The eye strain of a magic eye times like 50, and then you're also using your cognitive abilities to understand what the fuck you're actually seeing, and your eyes don't fully understand, but your brain goes, huh, maybe, okay, we'll piece it together this way. As far as the controller, though, it's comfortable as shit, dude. It's ergonomic as hell. And your thumbs both sit dead center on those D-pads. It's the Wii U gamepad, except it's D-pads and it works. Like with Mario Tennis, I want to say my memory is shit, but I want to say the movement of Mario Tennis was you could have it on either D-pad. So you can move left to your left side with the left D-pad. You can move right with the right side on the right D-pad. But I think you could still go opposite directions, just going on the other input of that D-pad. That or one of them was used for like 3D like more complex spatial movement. So like say you're Mario and well you don't it's not a Game Boy. You're not going to hit B for strike and then bam there goes the ball. This is the ball is coming up this way. Oh, this is no it's coming down this way. We got to play to the 3D 3D
So like the
ness
right D-pad kind of controls like the direction of your tennis racket
of your
swing?
tennis. Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
I want to say it did that more than the movement, but I want to say movement was also on both sides. I can't remember, but it's comfy, and it's weird because it's like that's the one good thing that console did, except the weird fucking quirk. Okay, the shop owner was not in the shop when I came by and played, and I was working with the person working at the time, and we were sitting here trying to figure out where the fuck do you plug this thing in? Like,
Oh.
okay, so it took us about 30 solid minutes of like Googling and then like, what the fuck? There's something weird about my controller. Oh, my Virtual Boy's broken. Couldn't get a lot of good answers. Which is stupid because this is like a main feature of a console. This should be common knowledge, but it's not. So you plug the controller in to the wall. Like, not to the. I want to say you get power through the controller. Like, the visor plugs into the controller, and then you plug the controller into the wall, if memory serves. And like, you know how the brick of the GameCube, the power brick, has that one little cable coming out the end, and like it looks like a little Lego brick with a 2-prong thing, and one side's a semicircle and the other side's square, but it's one solid pill shape kind of. Imagine that coming into the visor from the controller, and then the controller to the wall.
So if this was a I could understand this design if this was a device that you wore on your head and you were maybe moving around. Because if you walked out of range of it, you instead of yanking on your head, instead of your head yanking on the wall, it would be the controller,
Get a little tug in your hand. Yep.
So that I could understand. However, from what I understand, you don't strap the Virtual Boy to your head and have it be free moving when you use it.
I would say that I'm disappointed that you don't, but that thing is kind of front heavy too. So I feel like in order to make the Virtual Boy comfortably sit on your head for like relaxed playing in a chair, you'd have to have like some heavy metal like back of the headband too. Like you remember the night vision goggles from Jurassic Park, the huge fucking things with the green lights that spun. And it was like 50 pounds. I feel like that's what the Virtual Boy would have to be.
Yeah, or it would have to have one of those like valves that a hard hat has, when you put it on and you know what I'm talking about?
No? Are you just making a Valve reference?
No. It's hard hats, dude. It's like the hat is hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the inside of it has like the 4 straps that go around your head. And then the back of it has like a crank. You just twist it, and that either like tightens or loosens.
Oh,
the strap.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I know what you mean. Yep.
Which until this day, I never like thought about that and related it to the Valve logo, but that it totally reminds me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was way like the Valve logo. That was way before they ever planned on getting into VR, so I don't think it was related. But
for sure. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm glad you brought up VR because the thing about what you were saying about like your eyes are doing like a magic eye, right? Because that's like how stereoscopic 3D works. The difference with the magic eye is that it's a single image in front of you, and you need to like use your willpower to unfocus your eyes on it and then focus them differently. While with like VR, and I thought with like the Virtual Boy, your eyes are getting a different image, each of them, and so they in theory they shouldn't have to do any kind of magic eye stuff. They should just see it and your brain goes like, oh, it's like this.
It might have a lot to do with the fact that like magic eyes, that you're having to compensate for being on a 2D plane, being that it's a sheet of paper. So with making 2D graphics and fool your brain into making it think you're 3D, I would think it's still kind of the same challenge, but I don't know how the Virtual Boy necessarily works.
Well, the only way, like we're getting real scientific here, but like
Hmm.
the only way that you achieve 3D is just by seeing an image with two eyes, right? Or
Mm,
by seeing a different image with both eyes
yeah,
at a slightly different angle. You know what I mean? That's
that
why
makes perfect sense.
that's why if you close one eye, you don't have any depth perception, you know?
Hmm.
Because when you have both your eyes open, you're seeing everything at a slightly different angle. And so your brain knows anything that your two eyes are seeing like further apart is closer to you and that kind of thing, you know? So if you're able to if a VR thing is able to just deliver a different picture to both of your eyes and those two pictures are just two different cameras in the same game that are about as spaced apart as eyeballs, you know, it's super seamless for your
Hmm.
brain to pick up on it as just regular vision. I actually tried out VR for the first time myself very recently,
Mm.
and I was amazed at how like not eye straining it was and not motion sicknessing it was and stuff. It was like super seamless, and I really liked it.
Yeah, and even
Um,
the first time I tried it, I was drunk. Didn't puke at all. Didn't want to. It was great. I fucking loved it.
but yeah, I do wonder if like something about the Virtual Boys, like maybe it's the 32-bit system is not
Hmm.
able to, like maybe the fact that it's lower res and you know the fucking 2-bit color depth and that kind of stuff, you know, is maybe some of that is why it was straining.
And it's like I would think maybe frame rate has something to do with it too, because if you actually look at it, it actually looks like it runs at a really nice 60 solid frames a second. But here's the problem with that. With VR, I think in order for it to get to the point where it fools your brain into you seeing that as a 3D image, it has to be moving at like what, 90 frames a second? I
Yeah, I'm not sure what the actual number is, but I'm pretty sure most VR headsets are above 60. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to be, or else I think you'd get severe, not even motion sickness, but like migraines probably. I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Like I want to try out more VR pretty soon because when I used it, it did not trigger any kind of motion sickness whatsoever, and that was even playing a game that was moving. You know, like
Hmm.
you can play Beat Saber, and that you're just standing there. You know, there's no problem. But I tried another game that was like an auto like a on rails automatic movement kind of thing, and that's what you would expect maybe to kind of.
Were you shooting like evil clowns at this weird nighttime, like a carnival, like roller coaster ride? Not
Oh,
like a
Carnival? No.
carnival. Yeah, that was a
Nah.
good game. I love
Car-
that.
no, no, no. It was not that. It was what was the? I can't remember the name of
I
it,
think
but
that's the free demo that PSVR actually packs in Carnival. I can't remember, but I think it is.
oh, so that was a joke. Carnival is a different game.
Oh, okay. I don't know what it's actually called then.
Oh, okay. But yeah, the other one I played, you were also shooting dudes. It looked a lot like Super Hot, but it wasn't Super Hot. Is
Mm.
basically how I would describe it. But anyway, point is though, I would want to try some of the other ones, like where you have some movement, like Resident Evil 7. I'd be really interested in trying in VR because
God,
I've
that
heard
looks
that
so
has
fucking
like.
terrifying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard it has like modes to reduce sickness where it's like instead of it being a smooth turn left and right, you hit a button that like turns you 30 degrees at a time or
Mm.
something. But I don't know. It sounds to me like that would hurt my eyes. Speaking of which, we're a little off topic here, but speaking of which, when I first played the 3DS, I thought that the 3D effect on the 3DS was pretty cool, except Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D gave me a horrible headache. And I was
Okay.
and it took me a minute to figure out why, but I think it was because the camera angle changes. Like it's doing all these cutscenes at the start of the game, and every time that the camera switches angles, And so my brain is like in one 3D space and now it's in a different 3D space in an instant. That was like hurting my brain when it happened, you know?
I
Or
think
like
you
if,
said Ocarina of Time, right?
yeah.
I think that was the exact same game that I first experienced the 3DS 3D on as well. And I didn't like it didn't bother's not the right word. Here's my experience. I went, "Whoa, that's fucking cool." All right, now my eyes hurt, and I flipped the slider right down. I was like, "Yeah,
Yep.
it's way better."
So the other thing with 3DS that specifically like headached me was in Mario 3D Land, when you die, Mario like falls. And so if you're in a top-down level, he falls down away from you. And you see in 3D, oh, he's going in there, you know? However, he falls like through the floor, you know? But they draw the Mario on top of everything else, like as far as like the drawing layers of how it runs. This is kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, I'm not picturing this at all.
Okay, so imagine you've got a top-down camera angle, and then Mario gets hit by something, and you know in Mario when he gets hit by something and da 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 da, and he pops
Hmm.
up and then he falls, right? So you're looking at that from a bird's eye view. He comes up at the camera and then falls away down, right? However, there's a floor there, and he goes through the floor because there's a floor there, right? But they don't actually draw him clipping through the floor. Even though he's past the floor, they're still drawing the model over the floor. So he's like getting smaller and
It's like it's part of the skybox almost. Like the floor becomes part of
yes.
the skybox without actually doing that. Yeah, they just make
That's what
Mario tinier and tinier and tinier.
Yeah, so that's what it's like, but because it's 3D, the floor is close to you, and then this Mario that's on top of the floor is far away, and that hurt my brain when I like it physically hurt me to look at it when it happened. So yeah, that was my other 3DS experience. Needless to say, I have a 2DS now, and I'm
Yeah, I can
perfectly
feel
happy
that.
with it.
I think the thing for me with the 3DS just it didn't make me sick, but it was a small enough screen to where I feel like my viewing angle and viewing distance, my natural viewing angle and distance was just slightly out of range, and I needed to be looking at it slightly closer for it to not bug me and hurt my eyes. So I
Yeah.
would always just go. Well, I heard anyway that if you turn the 3D all the way off, you get a whole bunch more battery life anyway. So I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll
Yeah,
take it.
the graphics look a little bit better on a lot of games too, like
Mm.
if it doesn't have to do that. Because that's the thing is that for 3D, all it has to do is deliver a different image to each of your eyes, which means if 3D is on, it's having to render two images, you know,
Yeah.
instead of one.
It
But
looks
so
cool though. I will say it does look good.
it's neat. Yeah, and I remember when it first came out, it was like 3D without glasses. That sounds insane, you know, and
Hmm.
it really was. Uh, One thing about like the viewing angle kind of thing and needing the specific one is, have you tried a new 3DS?
There's like 3 new 3DSs, aren't there?
No, no. There's the 3DS, and then there's the new 3DS.
There's well, hang on, because I thought there was also like okay, so there's the 3DS, then there's the new 3DS, then
Mm-hmm.
there was the 3DS XL,
Yeah,
and
it's the
then
same thing. It's just bigger.
so same hardware as the new 3DS, but it's just in a bigger or you know.
So there's the 3DS, and then there's the
Hmm.
3DS XL, right? And they're the
Hmm.
same thing, just one of them's physically bigger. And
Oh,
then there's
okay.
the new 3DS, and there's also an XL model of the new 3DS also.
The screens aren't bigger?
They're bigger.
Okay, just
Yeah,
making.
yeah. Plays the same games, has the same controls, everything's the same. It's just physically bigger.
Yeah.
Uh, so the reason I ask is because the new 3DS has a different kind. It has actual eye tracking with the camera on the 3D, and so if you like turn the system to the side and stuff, it's still able to give you 3D. You know, you're not like off the sweet spot anymore.
Cool.
and it actually works surprisingly well. I was very impressed when I tried it. Where yeah, it's pretty cool.
I should love the 3DS, but that's just the part of gaming history where I just totally skipped out and just only did PC stuff. So
Yeah,
and maybe
not
that's why I'm not so against motion controls and stuff like that. Like, well, maybe not against is the word, but like, I love good motion controls and good vibration that isn't intrusive.
good vibration.
Good vibes, yeah.
Uh, so as far as the yeah, not to confuse you, but to give credit to your confusion earlier, there is also the 2DS and a 2DS. I think there's a 2DS XL, but I'm actually not sure about that.
I
But
think
then
there is.
there is definitely a new 2DS and a new 2DS XL also.
Yeah,
So
and I
the
was like, what's the difference between what's the new part?
So the new, so yeah, so there's the 3DS, 2DS, and 3DS XL, and maybe a 2DS XL, right? And that's without the new, right? Those are all like the
Hmm.
different models of the 3DS you can get. And then, so when you add new, it has a right analog stick as well as the left, and it has ZL and ZR, so it's got two shoulder buttons on ech side, and it's a
Okay.
little bit more powerful. So there's like 3 games that it can play that the other one can't.
And they
Yeah,
stopped making those officially like last year or so, didn't they?
yeah. The other thing that is different about it is I think, and this might also be linked to the power level of the systems, is that I think only the new 3DS had a Super Nintendo Virtual Console on it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think.
Interesting.
I'm not positive on that detail, but if that is correct, then there's probably some other stuff too that that it did differently.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's your various DS models. It's a wacky controller. Remember
What's
when they
that?
made bongos for the GameCube?
Ah, I have a pair.
Me too. I
I
got
never
two.
used them, but I do have a pair.
They don't feel good.
No.
I've used them. That it's like it's not like a nice MIDI trigger or something. Like on an electric drum kit or something. It's like it's like a big soft button that feels very bad to press.
It feels very bad to press. Yes, it's it's like so. I never had them new. I think the game came out after I sold my GameCube for an Xbox. But I have a pair that I got from a Goodwill. So take of that what you will. But when I press those goddamn surfaces, it's like 3 inches of silicone travel and then switch at the bottom. And it's just like, okay, I know kids had probably beaten on this to hell, but I don't think they were ever that good to begin with. And I don't.
Yeah.
You got to get a real feel for them.
Right, like if you imagine yourself playing a rhythm game on them, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Because if they're like bongos, you imagine you're just supposed to hit them with the tips of your fingers, but that will not, like, you're not exaggerating. Well, you're exaggerating about the 3 inches, but you're not
Yeah.
exaggerating that there's like a ton of travel before you hit the switch. So if you're just tapping them with your fingers, you're not actually going to activate them. You're not actually going to hit the buttons.
And that's another
So
thing. Why did they go with digital switches? Like why not just like a nice little analog potentiometer that you can just hit with a spring, and it like pressure sensitive for your sound. Why would they make it just this big fucking silicone cake and then just put a little clicker at the bottom of it?
right, right, right. So yeah, so like if you're thinking about actually playing a rhythm game, it's like, are you supposed to hit them with hammers? Because
Mm.
like that would get you that would it would hit it at the right time. It would
Yeah.
get your timing if you used some reckless equipment, right? Or your option is to rest your fingers on the bongos and press down. However, that's very tiring, and the timing is not very good on it for something like Donkey Konga, because
Yeah.
because of how shitty they feel. It's really hard to like actually time it out. Those bongos, man, I wish I liked them, but I don't.
I haven't tried them yet, so I can't give a fair assessment, but from handling them and moving them from one box to another, I wasn't impressed.
Yeah.
Also, man, those surfaces build up some dirt too. Those drum skins get like real gross looking.
Yeah, I don't know what material they're made out of, but you are correct. They like even if you don't use them, they just get grimy.
Weird controller, that's not so weird, but weird by default in its application. Typing of the Dead keyboard controller for Dreamcast. Have you
Well,
seen that?
was it not just a keyboard that plugged into a
It's
Dreamcast?
just a keyboard plugged into a Dreamcast.
Oh, okay. But it was
Yeah.
only used for that game?
It was
Nah,
only no.
Dreamcast had like Phantasy Star Online on it, didn't it?
Yes, it has Phantasy Star Online, and that's how you would communicate with other people. But I think it was a pack-in peripheral for Typing of the Dead.
Okay.
I
Let me
really
one
want to
up
try
you
it.
with that. Have you ever seen that GameCube controller
Mhm.
it's a full ass keyboard with just GameCube handles on the sides?
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's apparently like that's the best way to play Phantasy Star Online. Actually, is
Oh yeah.
if you have the GameCube Director's Cut version, and I think it's easier to hook up to online too. Getting a modem, like I think you just need a Raspberry Pi if you want to do it with the Dreamcast, but I think it's a lot easier to do it with the GameCube. And like the actual controller apparently it's much better than the Typing of the Dead keyboard because it's just a fucking keyboard. Whereas this, you're holding it the whole time, much like the Wii U gamepad, this gigantic fucking thing in your hands, and it's like all of a sudden I have to put it in my lap to start typing. But immediately that's so much better than the Dreamcast's variant because the Dreamcast variant is just a straight up keyboard you keep on your lap, I believe. Whereas the GameCube combined it into one, I want to say. Because
I would
one input?
prefer a keyboard just on my lap. I don't want my hands to be a foot and a half apart while I'm playing and then have to set it down and then type and then pick it back up.
Think about it,
So
though.
then the entire time that you're holding the controller weighs 5 pounds? I don't know, man.
Yes to the weight. I agree with you on the weight being an awkward thing, but go with me here. Say I am playing a high action part and, I'm not using head comms or whatever for the GameCube online. I'm in a boss fight or something in Phantasy Star Online. I need to do something real quick, but I need my teammate to do something even quicker. So immediately I take the controller, I place it down, I type, and then my hands default right back to the sides of the controller and pick it up. It's one less step than having a keyboard there, because with the keyboard in your lap and the controller in your hands, you first have to put the controller down to get it out of the way. Go to type your thing, and that's if you don't have to adjust it in your lap, whereas with the GameCube, you've placed it where you want it. With this, you have to just look, find your home row, type, and then, okay, whatever. And then you have to then pick your controller back up wherever you placed it. God knows where the fuck you put it. You needed to yell at your idiot teammate about damaging instead of healing or some shit, And then now you got your controller back up, and by the time that you've gone back to what you can do with the GameCube controller, you've now probably taken a little bit more damage than you needed it to, That's my thinking.
I don't know. So, like, I agree with some of what you're saying. I don't think that I don't think that there's any problem in setting a controller down to then use a keyboard that's already in your lap. Unless, like, you set it on the arm of your chair and then your cat knocks it onto the floor while you were typing. I could see something like that being an issue, But other than that, I don't see the big difference between put a controller down. How about this? How about you need your friend to do something, so you're going to keep your left hand on the analog stick while you're typing with your right hand.
Oh, no.
It's a lot easier to just hold a half a pound controller in your left hand.
Man, it's so much easier. It's so much easier for me to type with my left hand. I've got years of practice with that. I can't type with my right hand.
that is true. Like you definitely do a lot more like mouse on the right hand typing with the left than you do or like whacking off with the right hand while you type with the left, Yeah, you definitely do that a lot more than
I'm doing it right now.
Typing with your right hand. Sure. Well, hey, maybe you need to type with your left hand while you input a complex sequence of button inputs with the right hand. Anyway, point is, I guess I just don't. Ah, I don't think I'd play with that GameCube keyboard controller. That's my whole point here.
I wonder,
Nah,
is it one of those super expensive GameCube peripherals now? Like,
I bet.
I bet
Man,
it's super expensive too.
I wish I had just bought those GameCube controllers back when they were only like $100.
This is
You
stupid.
know,
Why would anyone pay $100 on it? Because they don't want to pay $500 later.
right? Because like the thing, like I got my GameCube modded for RGB, but like there's so little difference between RGB and component that I feel like I would have rather just been using a stock system, rather than a modded one, and just use the official component cables. In hindsight, that's how I should have done it, especially because it cost quite a bit to get it modded anyway, so it was a dumb decision.
Yeah, that's kind of a rough system to have spent a bunch of money on because a whole bunch of options came out just recently for like plug and play RGB.
Yeah,
I'm
but
looking at keyboard controllers here. The Sega Dreamcast keyboard, looking complete in box, is looking at $30. I do not see anything listed here for the GameCube, so I can't even find a price on it right now. I'm sure eBay will have something though.
yeah, that sounds crazy. But anyway, do you have any other wacky controllers to talk about? Because we can go back
Yeah.
to like the fucking Jaguar and that piece of shit.
I've never actually held a Jaguar controller. No, I actually remember now that what I said was my wild and wacky left field controller earlier was not the NEG Con. That's just one I wanted. The wild and wacky one out of left field. Can we talk about something called Step Mania? I mean, God damn it, not Step Mania. Fuck it. The game was so shitty. I can't even remember the name of it. It was the knockoff DDR, where you know how the DDR controls is just like one big D-pad that you step on the floor. This was the opposite. It was every space that the DDR pad did not occupy. So it was top left and right, bottom left and right corners, and then a center button. And it was the stupidest goddamn. You play DDR for years. This game comes along, you try it, and it does nothing different except the control layout's fucky. It's like, dude, oh my god, I fucking hated that controller so much. I'm sure like maybe 2% of humanity out there who's played video games as well can actually identify with my complaint here, but can you see that at least being disorienting?
Oh, yeah.
Were you ever a DDR fan?
No. I told the story earlier that like the only times I ever played DDR as a kid, I didn't understand what a rhythm game was.
Oh, that's right.
So it's like the arrows start coming up, and I was just like, okay, hit this sequence as fast as I can, and I'd just lose right away, and that was that.
So you looked at it like a fighting game trials run or something. It's like, here's all the inputs, put them all in right now.
Yep. And then Guitar Hero kind of taught me what an actual rhythm game was. And now I'm like, I love rhythm games, and I've played a bunch of them, but I've still never played DDR. Like, I mean, nowadays I've played like 2 rounds of DDR in an arcade now that I know how to play it. Yeah, but that's it.
Okay, yeah, I played DDR at pretty much any arcade that had it. And my stupid fat little out of shape ass was like, failing by song 3, but I loved every second of it. I was having fun all the time. Sucked at it, but loved playing it. I didn't actually own any of the home console ports. But man, when you played on the PS2 or I think there was a couple PS1 versions, there was DDRs for a lot of systems actually. The soft pads, like the fold-out mats, are like the worst shit ever. Because the way you use those controllers, the very nature of dancing on top of them means it's gonna crinkle up and get into like a ball beneath you. You're gonna miss the inputs because it's turning underneath your feet and you're not hitting the thing the right way. It's a mess, but you can buy home controllers for like $200 to $500, like actual steel plug-in PS2 controllers. Pretty cool.
Yeah, because another big thing is like the bar behind you is super important to have for balance. It's funny, like, so I've watched some pro DDR stuff. Specifically, I want to say the game is called like ITG or something. Do you know what
Hmm.
I'm talking about?
No.
It's like the clone hero of DDR, kind of, except I think it's been out a long time before Clone Hero. So
That's
forgive
Stepmania.
me for saying that.
What I was referring to
Um,
earlier, Stepmania is actually
oh,
just
okay.
DDR, but on a computer.
Yeah. The funny thing about it though is that like the people who are the very best at it, what they're doing is like they're holding on to a bar behind them and they've got their feet diagonally on all four buttons and they're
Oh
moving
yeah.
just as little as possible, just making the tiniest little foot motions,
God,
you
that
know.
pisses you off,
All
doesn't it?
their whole body is all tense and they're just like wiggling their ankles around. But you look at the screen and they're doing these fucking 2,000 note combos at 100 notes per second and it's just nuts. So, yeah, that stuff's funny.
It's one of those things. It's like it's really impressive, but when you see it happening, you're like, "What is this stupid shit?" Like, you don't know what's going on. But at the same time, dude, okay, listen. If someone tells me, let me show you this video of these pro DDR players, I want some fucking actual dance moves. You know, like that's actually like fuck DDR competitions should have style points with the judges can issue alongside gameplay or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's definitely two different like fields of like what are you looking for
Hmm.
in because yeah, I'm sure people who are actually into the dancing games, then what they care about is who is like technically the best, you know. But as like a casual viewer, yeah, this goes along with everything, you know. As a casual viewer, you want to see some swag.
But back to the weirdness of these controllers, I actually think that okay, well first of all, if you imagine a real giant D-pad for you to step on, you got the cardinal directions north, south, east, west. Uh who the fuck actually dances? The human legs don't make that pattern in a natural sense at all. So like if you think about anyone who's dancing, they have to be slanted, like you see those pros doing, because you're working with two legs and you're working with up and down when you slant your body like that. So I guess the idea of making the 5 button like reverse checkerboard kind of pattern thing was making it so you have a more natural progression of the way the body would dance, and there's more buttons. So like yeah, the addition of the 5th button, even though I actually really fucking hate this game, thinking about it out loud, it seems like it made it a little bit more ergonomic. But oh dude, I don't know what it was back in the day. It just DDR just felt so much better.
Yeah, and what I was saying about like the way that like the best of the best play the DDR, the cardinal direction style, their feet are able to cover all four buttons at
Hmm.
once by standing on the corners, and you can't do that with the game that you're talking about because they're slightly more spread out. So
You'd
it
have to do the
forces you to
same
move your
thing.
legs.
Yeah, you'd have to do the same thing. What? No, no. Yeah, you're right. You'd have to crab walk and then use your butt for the middle button.
Mhm.
That'd
Well,
be
there you
actually kind
go.
of fun to see. Do you have any more weird controllers you want to talk about?
I don't think so. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any that are necessarily, all that worth talking about.
We haven't mentioned a single fishing rod controller yet.
Well, you're the fishing rod controller guy.
Nah, I don't own a single one. I was hoping you had one.
I thought you were gonna, you were talking about playing Smash TV with the fishing rod controller. Was that all a bluff?
That was a total joke. I don't think you can do that. Like the fishing rod controllers I know of are for PS1 and Sega Genesis, and by extension PS2 because backwards compatible controller.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't think Smash TV because I bought that on the NES, so there's no way I'm doing that with an NES controller. Um, but fishing rod controllers themselves, I'm surprised there hasn't been more progress made with things like the Switch with HD Rumble. Like I guess with the Switch's Joy Cons, they kind of want to just be the fishing rod, but I feel like there's so much potential for the advanced motion sensing stuff that's in the Joy Cons, like the HD Rumble stuff too, the HD Rumble stuff that could so well simulate the slight machine, like sewing machine kind of feel that you'd get from reeling in a fishing rod. Then there could be like the tug of like the hook actually like hooking in the fish's mouth or something like that. There's so much potential that I haven't seen explored, and it's hard to tell whether or not that's because the technology is there or if the demand is there, because I feel like fishing games are even less popular than they ever used to be.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, though. That HD Rumble, I feel like a very good use of that would be to feel a fishing line
Mm-hmm.
moving in your hands. That's a really good point.
It's just I the only modern fishing game that I actually know about right now is that game I talked about a couple episodes ago, Real Fishing Road Trip Adventure on the Switch. I was just so surprised that Real Fishing was even still being made. That I was so happy to get a copy of that, and when I played it, oh, god damn it! It wasn't even the control of the fishing rod either. It's just such a weird, awkward game. Anyway, go watch that episode if you want to hear about that. Yeah.
Right, you were saying it was like a visual novel almost, right?
Yeah, it's not something okay, back in the day, your son wants a PlayStation for Christmas. You want to go out fishing with them. I'm not speaking of personal experience at all here. You want to spend time with your kid.
Anybody's personal experience here. When has this ever happened?
Okay, well, so I live in the South, so fishing is a little bit more ingrained in our culture here. And also I live in Richmond, which is known as River City, which is fucking cool for retro gaming reasons.
So I'm in Minnesota, which is the land of 10,000 lakes. So there's definitely a lot of fishing here also, and ice fishing.
That's true. That is true. There's probably just as many rednecks up there as there is here. But like for me, like thinking about it, just historically wise for hardware, you get a PS1 for your kid for Christmas. You like to go fishing. You're an outdoorsman, but your kid's a video game person. And also you love your son very much. Let's pad this story out a little bit. And so, Real Fishing was a game that any fisherman could pick up. Just like football is a game for sports fans who aren't really big into like Mario or stuff like that. They get a video game console, they play the thing that they enjoy in real life. So you play Real Fishing, it's a good relaxing fishing game. It's actually somewhat technical. It's pretty cool. This game is your a 23-year-old kid who likes fishing but also anime. It's a totally different target audience. You're a kid who likes fishing but also you just played 40 hours of Persona. You know what I mean? It's strange.
So, good segue here.
That doesn't happen anymore is what I was saying. Like you don't buy a PS4 for a fishing game.
Yeah. So, speaking of, so that's what you were playing a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you, what have you been playing nowadays? Let's move on to our video gaming segment. What's Nox been playing?
Well, we could talk about the rando stuff I've been running through my Sega Genesis, or we could talk about Pokemon Green.
Well, yeah, dude, you've been playing Pokemon Green. Let's hear about it. Because I watched you play a little bit of Pokemon Green, and it was a lot more different than I was expecting. I thought that it was, in Japan they had Pokemon Red and Green, and then when they brought it to the US, for some arbitrary reason, they just changed one of the colors, and that's the only difference. But no, it's way different. Tell us about it.
I wouldn't say it's way different. I would say I'm loving it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Because I love the original Gen 1 games to death. I play modern Pokemon, and the magic isn't there. I played the Game Boy Advance remake of Green called Leaf Green, which was just kind of like a nod to the original Japanese Green, saying like, hey, we're remaking it, but this is the original, so we're going to take from that. I played it, and I absolutely hated it. I got to where you might find... I got to where you'd find a Pikachu right after the forest, right before Pewter City. And I really did not like the game at all, because there was just something... You know when you have like a weird fight or flight like anxiety kind of thing going on and like you're doing the normal things you normally do but they don't feel normal and you're feeling like, "Oh, what the fuck's going on?" That was kind of like my sensation of playing Leaf Green versus or OG Red. Um I'm a huge fan of the initial Gen 1 graphics. I don't need those upgrades because I played Ruby and Sapphire and I got that game experience from those. I like when I'm playing red or green or blue or whatever, I want weird, weird fucking like sprites of Pokemon that if you're just getting into the game as a kid for the first time, you're gonna go, "Oh, look at this Venomoth," and then you get the Pokemon card and you go, "Huh, that looks a lot different."
Yeah,
This one looks
yeah.
a lot like
Plus,
chunkier.
you want to play the original so you can do the weird glitch and catch Mew, right?
Nope, I'm actually doing a totally glitchless run, which turns out is impossible because the game is glitched to begin with. Um, it could just be something with the fan translation or not, but I was able to get to Saffron City much sooner than I should have been able to because one guard like a tower guard place, they don't let you through. And he's just an NPC. He's like, "Oh, I sure am thirsty." So you go around and then you do all this stuff. You get the guy a drink. You come back to him and he lets you in. You can progress the story. He was just like, "Hey, thanks for the drink." Never met him in my life. So I was like, "Oh shit." Well, I stepped back and I went. I'm still going through the game as you would go. So yeah, I'm not doing it for the glitches because I feel like this game might be a little glitched too much to begin with. Like I'll get 396 XP for killing one Pokemon on this kid's team, and then I'll kill the second Pokemon, even if it's just like another Zubat, and I'll get 29 experience points. I don't actually think I'm getting that 3-digit number. I think it's just showing me another digit because sometimes, for some characters, it won't show a letter or a number. It'll show just a weird glitched like hieroglyph thing almost, like that wasn't meant to be in the game, but it is just because
Also,
random memory
you're
error.
you're killing the Pokemon? You must be playing the uncensored version. Holy shit.
The thing is, Pokemon is dark no matter how you censor it. At the end of the day, you're still, enslaving animals against their will and forcing them to fight to each other,
Well, no, they
almost to
want
death.
to fight, and they that's what they tell you. They want to fight. They
They
like it.
they love you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
That's
like
what we keep telling ourselves.
the differences in green though is like there's 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 very little difference geographically except for Mountain Moon. Mountain Moon is a little bit I think they toned it down in the later revisions because I think they realized that the encounter rate of all the fucking zoo, like you probably can't breathe. There's so many goddamn bats in there. Like you're gonna cough out a bat at some point.
Well,
Um,
yeah. So what's interesting about that, though, is that everybody talks about the Zubats in Mountain
mhm.
Moon. It's like a huge meme thing. So, like,
It's
are you
worse in
saying it's
green.
it's actually worse in green,
Hmm.
or do you just think that? Are you sure that you just didn't realize just how bad it was in red and blue?
No, it was bad in red and blue. I remember it being pretty bad in red and blue. I haven't played red and blue like super recently to compare, but I think like in I don't think the encounter rate's different. I just think the actual pathway is longer in green version. Like it's a little bit harder.
Okay. So yeah, so tell us about like the other differences, right? Because one big thing about it is that if not to just like speak for you, but the thing is Pokemon was this actually I didn't know until later, and this is super obvious for a lot of people, but Pokemon was a video game first before anything else. It
Hmm.
was a video game. Here's a new game, it's called Pokemon, and people are like, "What's Pokemon?" "Oh, it's this." And then they made an anime later. Now, I believe in the US, though, we got the anime before we got the game, or at least we got the game after the anime was in production. The reason I'm saying this is because in our Pokemon games, one of the names you can pick for your main character is Ash, and and one of the names you can pick for the rival is Gary, which are the names in the anime, and that's not the case in Pokemon Green, right?
Yeah, I actually don't think it is. No, I think you're totally right. I'm trying to remember what the names were in green, but I'm pretty sure there was no Gary.
Yeah.
So,
So that's like one thing, right? Is that like it was a little bit less attached to the anime in that way, but then also, well, just give us
well,
these
red and blue are totally detached from the anime too. The Ash and Gary thing very well may be what you're talking about, where it came out later. So yeah, I'm looking at Pocket Monsters Green, Red and Green, and that's 1996 in February. Red and Blue came out September 20 or 1998, or 2 years later, in September. So the anime, I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure. I want to say I saw the anime after I started playing the game. Pretty
right.
certain,
Yeah,
but pretty
same
close
here.
by too.
I'm pretty sure we got the game before we watched the show, but it may have been a show in Japan already. You know.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. It's looking like well, that's for English, but the original run. Okay, yeah, the original run was 1997, so 1 year after the game came out. Yep.
But one
So
year before Red and Blue.
to North America. Yep, you are correct. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, but also like all the sprites are different in green.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say all of them. Some of them actually look like they have the same exact sprite as they do in red. But yeah, the ones that are different are they're real funky, and you have to love Pokemon and love the charm of the first gen to really appreciate the because this is this is this is like drawing board Pokemon kind of for the West, I guess, because there's a lot of Pokemon that got cut over time that we never knew about, and there's a lot of like mechanics that got cut before I think the games came to North America. And this is not like you're not going to see new Pokemon, but you're going to see Pokemon you know, and they're going to look goofier than you've ever seen them. Goofier or cursed, just straight up fucking cursed. They're terrible.
Yeah.
I love them though.
Yeah. If you want a really good example, look up the Pokemon Green version of Ekans.
Oh my god.
It is the silliest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. The little side note here, the Meowth sprite is this like it's kind of like a normal front facing profile Meowth sprite, just like what you think a Meowth looks like, except for some reason its body is like a little stocky, a little shorter and just chubbier. Like it's just a chubby Meowth, and it's the cutest, funniest fucking sprite I've seen in the game.
He's like a Garfield Meowth.
It almost looks like a Garfield. Like he's halfway there to Garfield, yeah. And a dear friend viewer of mine in my chat drew me with that cat. We called the Meowth Coin Purse because my chat names every Pokemon for this run. That's just the one gimmick of the run. And Coin Purse, it's a silly little perverted, silly name, but also kind of a super cute name for a Meowth because it's a coin on its head. It's a lucky cat. I was like, oh my god, this drawing is so fucking awesome. And now Pokemon Green is like, just via streaming it, like, is so much more special to me now than I thought it would be. I don't know if it tops Red because that's where my whole love for Pokemon started, and Gen 1 is fucking awesome. But Green is now way cooler than I ever expected it to be. Not even just for me being a streamer and experiencing the externalities of the game, not inside it, but like I'm having so much fun with just how goofy it is, but I know what everything is, where to go, what to do, but I'm experiencing it like I'm experiencing Red version all over again, like it's a new game. And it's like it's kind of everything I wanted, because the magic of getting to experience something for the first time that you absolutely love hours later, like it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna be all about this. Getting to experience that again is just it's pretty rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Pokemon, I want to hear your thoughts on this because I've never been able to really get into Pokemon games except for when I was a kid. Of course Pokemon was great. But like I've never I've rarely finished a Pokemon game, and because usually I end up getting bored of them halfway through, and I can never finish them. But I think I know why. I think I figured out exactly what it is. You've got a party of 6 Pokemon, right? But you can only battle one at a time, and that it just I just can't handle it. I feel like the game is totally set up to where everything about the game would be so much better if it was always 3 on 3 or something like that, you know?
Let me ask this: what was the last generation of Pokemon you played?
So the ones that I've played overall are like I played Blue when I was a kid, Fire Red when that came out, Pokemon X I played some of,
Okay, so
and
you've played at least a little bit past. I want to say it was Gold and Silver when they introduced dual battles. That
yeah,
was where you could fight two of your Pokemon against two trainers going against you, or you could
yeah,
be with another player in a 4-player multi-battle over the link cable.
right. So here's my deal. It should be 3 on 3 and every battle should be 3 on 3. Or the wild Pokemon, maybe not always. Maybe you'll fight 1 or 2 or 4 of them, right? But I need
Imagine
it to
that in Mount Moon with Zubats, dude.
yeah, this is what I want. I
Oh
need it to
God.
be a party because, like, the thing is, like, I love classic Final Fantasy or like Golden Sun, where you've got a party of 4 and you have to queue up everybody's attacks one at a time. You have to plan out your whole turn with multiple characters. You queue them all up, and then boom, it's battle time, and everybody takes their turn, and it's like this exciting thing where you see all of your different moves that you planned out with all your different characters kind of come through. And then oh, this guy is hurt, so I'm gonna heal him with this guy while these other two are still able to attack, and all these tactical decisions, right? But in Pokemon, it's just, oh, he's a flying type, so I'm gonna put my electric guy out and he's gonna one-shot him.
Yeah.
And then he's a flying trainer, so he's gonna throw out 3 more flying guys, and I'm gonna one-shot all of them with my electric guy. And
Mhm.
that's the whole game, is that it's one-on-one of you one-shotting things with your stab type bonus.
So I'm going to say that this precedent was probably most likely set because of the limitations of Game Boy hardware, not being able to process a whole lot of graphical effects at once. And if they were to do that, the Game Boy's resolution is so small that, like, my God, look at the sprites for the NPCs and you as you're moving through the towns and whatnot. That would have to be a Pokemon. And Pokemon are so different from each other, like stylistically, moveset wise, all this sort of thing, that like you really can't get super defined at that size to where, like, I'm thinking of it as like SNES graphics Final Fantasy 5 or Final Fantasy 6, trying to fit 150 Pokemon, like, let alone the like almost thousands there are now or some shit. Like, I don't pay attention to the newer generations, sorry. But the you get what I'm saying. It's probably hard to vary the sprites enough to where you could identify, okay, that is a Sudowoodo, therefore it's a rock flying, or not rock flying, rock plant or fighting. That's right. I don't think it had any
So
plant. Anyway, but
I
yeah, it's hard
I
to.
hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I hear what you're saying, but there's been fucking 20 generations of Pokemon games
Mm-hmm.
now, and there's still this one-on-one boring bullshit that I cannot stomach for a whole game, because it bores the hell out of me to have the one-on-one battle system, even stuff like the type matchup chart would be so much more interesting if every battle was 3 on 3. Instead, because right now, as it works, here's how Pokemon type matchups work, is either it does nothing, or one of the Pokemon in the battle has a gigantic advantage. So much of an advantage that the battle isn't even exciting because they're definitely going to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you have 3-on-3, so it's like this guy's good against that guy, but he's good against both those guys and that kind of thing, now it's interesting. You don't have to change how Pokemon works, just put more Pokemon in the battle, and I'm on board. I would love it if that were the case. But instead I hate it, because it's boring.
I'm with you on definitely with you on that when it comes to later generations where there's not really much of an excuse. My thinking is they had to have questioned this at themselves at some point. And I'm thinking like maybe if they play tested it, it's like, okay, what if we did 3 versus 3? Or what if we did whole teams like 6v6? What if we did something like that where we allowed them to duke it out all individually, like a party system in a Final Fantasy game or such and such? And then like maybe that would just like play out either too chaotically or be too hard to track, or maybe they just kind of thought that the majority of the audience for Pokemon would probably not like it. I have no clue. I'm just kind of spitballing.
Yeah, I mean, because I also just think that there's those moves like disable and stuff like that that are not exciting in a one-on-one environment, but if it was just one Pokemon out of your party, now that's an interesting move, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, all the pieces are there for it to work. They just need to do it.
I don't know. It's just it's so the one-on-one and to a much smaller extent, I want to say the 2v2 mechanic is just so ingrained in what Pokemon is, like from the anime, from the trading card game. You don't really do like, you know how have you ever seen a game of Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh for that matter? You have a field of monsters that go against each other, and they do exactly what you're saying. You choose who attacks what. Well, actually, in some games, you can't choose who attacks what. You just choose who defends what. But it's more complex. So I see what you're saying. In Pokemon, in the trading card game, it's even the same as like it would be in the Game Boy game. There's one active field for you to have a Pokemon out there, and what you do based on how much energy you attach to it and what its abilities are is up to you. But like, I want to say there's probably at least a couple game modes now in Pokemon, the trading card game, where you can have multiple Pokemon against each other. I don't know. I've been out of the trading card game since like a while ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe they've made it less stale. I don't know.
Well, as far as like what's ingrained in Pokemon already, the reason I keep saying 3-on-3 specifically is because if you have a party of 6, then that is a nice like 3 with 3 backup, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Because there's a lot of RPGs out there that have that kind of like linking system where like you might have a party of 3 or 4, but then you've got 3 or 4 not active party characters, but they're like the sub characters for each of the active ones, you know, and then they can tag in and out and do co-op attacks and that kind of thing. Like that's a great mechanic, and you know, I think it would work well with the that way you would keep the 6 Pokemon party ingrained, you know.
Yeah.
But have the three in front, 3 in back kind of thing. I don't know. Look, I'm talking about a lot because boy, maybe, would I like it if they did that.
Maybe you could make Pokemon better by just making them look shittier. I mean, that's how I'm having a great time.
Right, yeah. Well,
I am excited for new Pokemon Snap coming out at the end of the month. We're going to have to talk about that at some point.
Oh, sure.
That because I feel like that's going to be relevant to tonight, because how are we going to control it? Are we going to have the Joy-Cons as like a camera, or are we going to have it like it doesn't do shit and it's like a weird shitty first person shooter situation with an awful control? I don't have a Switch Pro controller. I have the thing that you slide the 2 Joy-Cons into, and it's terrible.
Oh yeah. That comes with it. It's all right. It's not bad, that thing.
Compared to the Pro controller, I think it's
compared
terrible.
to the Pro controller, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll take the Pro controller every day, but if you don't have that, I think the little slide-on thing it's comfy enough, except that the handles aren't quite big enough, so I feel like the tips of your fingers kind of ram into the back of it right away.
But unpopular opinion, I actually am kind of fine with just the tiny little single Joy-Con used as an NES controller. I actually don't hate that. With my gigantic hands, it doesn't bother me. As long as I use, I want to say it has to be the blue Joy-Con, the one on the left, because that Joy-Con has the joystick a little further more to the top, or AKA in this situation the left. So it makes more sense to use that one.
Hey, that's kind of in the controller conversation, right? Yeah,
Right?
if you're flipping your Joy Cons to the side to play a two-player game with the Joy Cons, yeah, you want the left Joy-Con because the on the other one, yeah, that analog stick is like right in the middle of it, and it's very weird.
And god damn it, it's reason enough to buy a pro controller if that just means you never have to take your Joy Cons in or out of that stupid handle thing ever again. Because remember when this is how you know QA is important. Remember when the Switch first came out and everyone was pissed because they thought they were breaking their Switch or their Joy Cons because they were accidentally putting the Joy Cons in upside down, and then it was like a
Yeah.
pain, like a royal pain in the ass to like press the button and then get that thing unclamped off the Switch. I did that a couple
Or
times.
like a lot also people didn't know and might still not that there's that little lock tab on one side that you have to have unlocked to be able to press
Mhm.
the button and pull it off. Yeah, it's one of those things where
I have
you just
something more to contribute to this conversation, a whole other dimension we haven't talked about. Daisy chaining controllers. How do you feel about that?
uh
Do you feel like
well,
you're riding, bitch?
let me think about it for a second. I have to think of an example of when this has ever happened.
The 3DO. If you wanted to play multiplayer, you would undo your control, like a little slot on the top of your controller. You plug the second player into that port, and they play through
Hmm.
your controller to the console.
That's crazy.
Right?
That sounds kind of cool.
It sounds like a cool thing if you're all about eliminating cords going across your living room. I loved it for that
Mhm.
idea. And if your teammate gets pissed off or whatever and throws the controller, there's more cord length there to travel before you yank on the console. And by extension, your hand in this situation, you can hold on to it. It's going to do less damage. I don't know why that never quite took off.
Oh, I don't know, man. If I'm player 1 and my player 2 throws their controller, I'd be pissed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'd be pissed
Yeah,
at them.
don't throw your
Get out of here
controller.
with that.
But I mean, like in terms of like just the ability to play multiplayer, it seems just a lot less cumbersome to have still just one wire going to the console.
I
I
like
like
the
that.
idea.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that the 3DO did that.
I never knew that it did that, but that sounds like a really cool idea.
Yeah, and then there's also weird situations where this is more a fault of the console than the controller. But the PC Engine only has one controller port. Um, so they made something called a turbo tap. I want to say, well, it's the PC Engine multi tap or whatever, but it's turbo tap because Turbo Graphics 16 in the United States. Anyway, that I want to say is like it's 5 ports. So I think it's the only multi tap with a weird odd number of controller ports to my knowledge, unless it's a third party thing. This is first party, and it was intended to play stuff. And I could be wrong about this, but I think you can actually daisy chain multi-taps. And I think you may be able to play that Bomberman game on PC Engine with like way too many people.
Huh. Yeah, I did I just bought a PC Engine recently and I did notice that it only had one uh controller port on it. Yeah, so
Oh,
if
well,
you
hang on. You bought the Duo though.
I bought the Duo,
So
yeah.
you bought the hardware after the PC Engine, where they had a little bit more sense. They should have just been like, "Hey, maybe we should have one more controller port."
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it only has one controller port on it. Maybe I'll have to look closer at it. Maybe it doesn't. Or maybe it does have a second. But what's weird about the multi-tap kind of stuff is if you think about like the way that it man, I wonder exactly how those work because you got to think about how it pulls the controller, right? Cuz the multi-tap can't just be it's got to have like logic gates in it or something, right? Where it can't just be a splitter, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because then it would be getting both it when it pulls, it's going to pull both controllers and it's going to get both controller data at the same time over the same inputs. So it just gets both players' inputs added together as one controller and that wouldn't be any use. So yeah, it would have to have like an extra bit of data to know.
This is actually relevant in my little Google search I found here.
Uh-huh.
This person on Reddit a year ago said there's no built-in detection for the multi-tap in the TurboGrafx 16. I'm currently developing a multiplayer game and learned that if you only have a single controller, it reads that controller for every joystick input. Games that wanted to determine if the multi-tap was attached had to write their own routines. So it very well may have been that you played your multiplayer. Yeah, okay. So someone was having trouble. They couldn't play multiplayer, but that's interesting too.
That is exactly what I'm thinking, though, is that if you're gonna, if the multi-tap is, if it all comes through the same port, and it was essentially an aftermarket product, that would mean that the games would have to be programmed specifically. Like, well, they'd have to be programmed in a different way. Like, all games have to be programmed to pull the controller, which is kind of actually a weird thing. With like NES games and stuff, different games have technically different amounts of input lag because they pull the controller at a different time. You know what I mean? If a game pulls the controller as early as possible, then that means that there's the most time between your inputs and the next frame that gets drawn, you know? But games that pull the controller later are going to have less. We're talking about the difference between, we're talking about sub 1 frame difference here, you know? But that it's a thing, you know? And so games that are 2-player, you know, then they have to take time to pull both controllers. But then, yeah, if it's like a multi-tap kind of situation where it's pulling out the same port, then it has to do them. Then, yeah, I wonder exactly how it does that, you know?
Well, so the key is in that first bit there where it said it reads like if you just have the single controller plugged into the port as opposed to the multi-tap, it reads the single controller in every possible logical controller port.
Right, which kind of makes sense to me because it's like let's say that the controller is 8 inputs, right? And so maybe it's 8 bits that it corresponds to. And then maybe they use a 9th bit to say whether it's controller 1 or 2, and the multi-tap recognizes that 9th bit in order to direct which port out it's polling, you know? But the regular single controller port on the system discards that 9th bit because it has never heard of a 9th bit before, and so it just pulls out the same port both times, you know?
I don't think that's how it would work. I mean, we're getting into real nitty-gritty electronics talk here, but I'm not an expert in I/O polling per se, but I do know that for like normal systems like the PlayStation 1, they have 2 controller ports, and I'm pretty sure those are a parallel connection, so it doesn't really need to poll at separate times. It just has I/O, like multiple I/O coming in at the same time. And it handles it as the CPU can cycle it normally.
Oh, so wait, which system is this?
I'm just thinking that, well, I'm theorizing this is how the PS1 works.
So the NES is not parallel. The NES is the only controller that I've taken apart and actually figured out how exactly it works because of
I was talking about the ports on the console, not the controller itself.
Yeah. So the ports are, or the different lines for an NES controller are not each of the different buttons, you know? It uses a shift register, a parallel to serial shift register. So,
okay, that's what that was.
Yeah, so what that means is normally if you had an 8-button controller and you wanted to hook it into the system and you were like, okay, well, there's a pin for each button, you know, that isn't really scalable because you have to have like 2 pins per button so that they can connect when you press the button. But the NES controller only has 5. There's 7 technically pins on the input, but the last 2 are only used by the zapper. The regular controller only uses 5 of them, And so one of them's power and one of them's ground, you know? You need those two to go in there. But then the other three are controls for the shift register. One of them is called latch, one of them is called clock or pulse, and one of them is the actual data. So only one of those pins is, or wires in the NES controller actually has the data of what buttons are being pressed being sent through it. So how it works exactly is in the NES controller there is a single chip called a parallel to serial shift register. And what all those words mean is that all of the buttons are connected to all of the pins are powered. And there's 16 pins on the shift register. 8 of them correspond to the 8 different inputs: up, down, left, right, start, select, B, A. And they're all powered. But they are connected through a button to ground. So when you're not pressing the button, they're just staying powered. When you press the button, it grounds that pin. That's how it knows which buttons are being pressed, is because that pin is either on or off, depending on whether you're grounding it. Now, here's the thing, though. You can press buttons all you want, and it's not doing anything with it until a pulse comes down that latch line. So all of the button data is coming in parallel because it's 8 pins at once reading the data. And when that latch signal is sent, boom, it saves the status of those 8 pins. And then at that point, whatever is the 0th bit of those 8 bits that it just saved, that the status of that gets sent down the data line. So the data line is either powered or unpowered, depending on whether the 0th bit is 0 or 1,
0, 1.
which depends on whether whichever is the first button that gets pulled was pressed at the time of latch, right? Then the reason it's called a shift register is because when each time that a pulse gets sent down the pulse or clock line, it shifts the data 1 bit over.
So that it can be read in a timeline sense.
Yes.
So it's not being able to take them all at one time.
Yes, hence parallel to serial.
Yes.
Because the buttons get read in parallel, saved into the shift register in parallel, and then they get sent serially out that single data line.
Yeah.
And that way you're able to have 8 or more buttons over just 5 lines, 5 electrical wires. So yeah, to wrap it up, what it means is that when the game wants to know what buttons you're pressing, it says latch. That saves which buttons you're pressing. Then it goes pulse, 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 and each time it does that, it's getting the next button down the sequence of whether it was pressed or not at the time that it latched. And the sequence of buttons, I don't know. It's the same. As in, like, it's just however they're wired in the inside of the NES controller, which, like, what order is it getting the buttons in? It's a set order. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a set order.
Yeah, it makes sense with the way that you laid it out once you told me it was that all the buttons were hot and you're just grounding by completing the circuit. That makes sense. I was going to say that we kind of went into the programming electronics weeds there. So for anyone who doesn't know, serial is imagine a river. You're getting a stream of information over a single line. Parallel is like you can put that information in all at the same time. Imagine like you're playing Connect 4 and you put a red checker, I guess, a red checker here and a black checker there.
I'd say
for
parallel
data.
is like a highway. There's multiple lanes that you're getting data in at the same time.
Yep. And well, the reason I brought up Connect 4 was because a shift register is going to take, depending on what you're trying to do with it, if you're trying to go parallel to serial or serial to parallel, what it's going to do is it's going to take the timing and it's going to, from serial, it will pull them out one by one and have the order of operations there. Whereas if you're going parallel to serial, I'm sure it's a little bit more complex than that.
So one other just interesting tidbit, now that we've talked about how an NES controller worked, is that shift register is 8 bits and there's 8 inputs on the NES controller. So how does the Super Nintendo controller work since it has 4 more buttons? I haven't actually taken it apart yet and verified this, but I think what it does is one of the pins of a shift register reads it. One of the pins of a shift register can when it gets the shift command, right? It discards the current data bit and shifts everything to the right, you know? I think there is a bit that is able to add data to the tail of it that or there like what gets filled in now on that last bit on the end of the chain, right? Now that bits 1 through 8, we've discarded bit 1 and shifted everything over. So now bit 8 is blank. What is that, right? There's a pin that decides that. And normally it's just grounded and it'll just be 0, right?
Well, you said the NES is 5 pins. The SNES I'm looking at is actually 7 pins. So
I don't know if they're all used though, because the NES is also 7 pins. If you just look at the controller port.
Wait, I was thinking 5 because odd number is what I was thinking.
Well, what the thing about the NES is if you look at the controller port, it's 7, but only 5 of them are actually used for a regular controller.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, the Zapper uses 7.
Okay.
Or maybe the Zapper only uses the other 2 or something. I don't know if it uses all 5 or all 7. Anyway, point is. So the SNES, I think what it does is it just has a second shift register for the other 4 buttons. And so when it latches, all 12 buttons latch, and then the data line of the secondary shift register is connected to the pin that is the incoming data for when the shift happens. You know what I mean? To essentially transfer the one shift register into the other one as it goes, and that way you're able to serially get all 12 lines. I'm guessing that that's how it works.
Would love any confirmations
actually
in the comments or anything if you guys know.
Yeah, if I decide to make a keyboard controller for Super Nintendo, then I'll be able to tell you for sure once I'm done with that.
Why would you want a Super Nintendo keyboard controller?
Because I like keyboard controllers and I think they're fun to use.
They're cool. They're fun to. Well, hang on. When I say keyboard controller, I'm talking like we were talking about earlier, like Dreamcast, GameCube kind of controller.
Keyboard. No, I'm talking about like that NES keyboard controller I made.
Okay.
Maybe I could make. I've thought about if I could make a Super Nintendo version of that. That might be fun.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so
do you have anything more to say about Pokemon Green?
Pokemon Green. Well, I'm still getting through it, so I will definitely say it's an easy as fuck game. It's made for kids for sure. But I know a lot of fans of Pokemon now, or people who aren't fans anymore, are kind of like, yeah, I grew out of it. It always seemed like it only just, was made for kids, and I can kind of see that. I like Pokemon, but like some of the games are just like, it's a little too campy,
So that was my issue with X when I tried to play that one, was that like Pokemon Red and Blue, you had your rival who was just a fucking dick.
It's always
and
a dick.
You wanted to just kick his ass, because he was such an asshole. But then I played Pokemon X, and it was like you had 4 companion characters, and none of them was like an antagonist.
Weird.
It was... Yeah, it was like there was like a guy who was like, I love dancing and my art form is dancing and I'm going to talk about how much I love Pokemon through my dance. And then there was another character that was like, I just love photography and I'm going to do all my Pokemon inspired photography. And then you had the one character that was like your actual rival. But as a rival, they weren't like your rival in Red and Blue. They were like, well, as long as we have fun, that's all that matters. And it's like, well, that's no fun for the player. I want to get fired up. So
in the first game, like the thing from the anime actually happens. Like you get to like Cerulean City and you read the town sign and it actually does say like, just fucking like dragging your nuts across the town sign saying fucking like Ash sucks or some shit. Like he's a real dick.
Yeah, and like every time that you get to a new gym, it says that like he was
He was
already
already
here and
there,
already
yeah.
beat it and stuff. Yeah, I loved that stuff. But yeah, so I just man the Saturday morning cartoon, just like family friendly, no conflict bullshit of X kind of made me a lot less interested in playing it.
I hear.
Also,
Oh,
it had other issues too. Like it had this, oh my god, like okay, so they're not making 3v3 Pokemon. Instead, they're adding all these other dumb mechanics that don't do anything. Like in Pokemon X, there was this new like Mega Evolution
ugh,
mechanic.
I hate
Have you
it.
heard about Mega Evolution?
I hate it
It's
every time I
like
see it.
it only works for one battle where it's like your Pokemon mega evolves for one battle. So your Charizard becomes a Charizard, and he's like and that's kind of cool for a second, but it only works for the one battle. Here's my issue with it though. There was no reason not to do it. Like there was no PP for it, there was no consumable resource that it had to use up to do it. It didn't even take up a fucking turn. Like
Wow.
there was no reason not to mega evolve your Pokemon, except that there was a 20-second cutscene every time, and so you didn't want to watch it every time,
That's
and it was
annoying.
just like, this is the dumbest mechanic I've ever seen. So yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
Pokemon X, I didn't like it.
they did they did experiment early on and it turned out really well though. Like with Gold and Silver and Gen 2. Gen 2 is my favorite. Just for you guys so you guys know. They introduced stuff like beauty contests, and the beauty contest would judge beauty or cuteness or all this stuff that had nothing to do with the entire Pokemon game at all. It's like, well, I don't fucking want to spend all my time like raising an egg to be a baby Pokemon, and then like gimping its stats all the way up to the top, and making it like a Smurf Pokemon where you just like have all the best stats as a baby type, and just like its only purpose is just to be in that weird like in-game beauty contest. And then you go to the Pokemon Center, and then you go upstairs now, because it's like it's not just the other side of the counter. You go upstairs, and then you see two different rooms. You see the normal battle room, and then you see I want to say they called it the event room or something like that, where you could do a real multiplayer, like your in the neighborhood kids friends actual Pokemon in a beauty contest. And it's like, then the game kind of was like, hey, you don't need to play this like you always play Pokemon. You can actually do whatever you want with all the Pokemon that are in this game. You want to catch nothing but like Magikarp and then try to beat the game? You can. You want to make the coolest fucking team of shiny Pokemon and then farm all those? You can. If you want to make a thing where it has nothing to do with the stats of winning the game at all, you can. You can farm an egg and then make it just raise it in a really specific way that the game will reward you for in a way that you wouldn't normally get.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's like those aren't mechanics that I would engage with just because of the way that I play games. But yeah, it's great though that there are people where it's like that's now they're interested in Pokemon because that is something that they like.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I got a game as well. I'm
Oh,
gonna keep it brief though, because I want to keep the podcast length down a little bit.
okay.
But briefly, I got a little bit of what I've been playing recently. First off, and I'll be particularly brief about this because I spent way too long on it last time. But I've been playing way more Binding of Isaac. I'm
Hmm.
fully back into it now, and I gotta say this new Repentance expansion is awesome. I really really like it now. Before I was half and half on it because I was like, well, it seems like the anti-birth stuff is kind of stupid, but the Ed stuff is really good. Um, I At this point, I went back and I actually to do a little research. I watched a couple Let's Plays of Anti-Birth to like confirm what was what, and And a lot of my suspicions were correct. But there is some stuff that is just straight from Antibirth that was just a really, really great idea. So yeah, a little correction there. Like there's a new character called Jacob and Esau that was from that was an Antibirth thing, and it's really cool. But okay, so overall though, I've been playing it a bunch again. The cool new Ed stuff has taken over as far as like there's more of it, and I really, really like it. As far as when you go down the like alternate path of the areas, how it works is like you can play the game normally. You can still play the game just like you always used to, but now when you beat the bosses and there's the trap door to go down to the next floor, there is optionally another door that takes you to the new place. And they're like harder versions of the same types of areas. Now though, so that was an Antibirth, and in Antibirth there was this whole thing where it's like you'd have to go find these rooms that randomly had these items that were pieces of a knife, and then there were three of them, I think, and then
Find the
and
red
then
key, blue key, yellow key.
yeah, so you find these three pieces of a knife because then when you go to the hard version of the depths, which is where you fight Mom, you fight like this ultra hard version of Mom, and then normally in the game, the next floor that you would go to is the womb, but this weird red door opens up or is there, but it's closed. And if you found all the knife pieces, you throw it at the door, and that opens that, and that brings you to the alternate path womb, which is called the corpse, right?
Let me ask this: are there cutscenes in this game?
Only when you beat it. There's an intro cutscene, and then there's several endings, depending on which path you take.
Because it seems like it has a pretty thick story from what you told me. And
It does.
how do you deduce that in a game that looks like you're playing cartoon Diablo?
So that's a really good question, because if you were to just watch all of the cutscenes in a row, as in like you just watch all the endings, you'd have an idea of the tone of the game, and you'd have a couple ideas, but really, it's really interesting. A lot of the game's story, I think you sort of get by you kind of have to get by playing it for a long time. Like you just sort of pick things up one at a time as you play it through the mechanics and through the different items in the game, you know? Like the idea that at the start of the or in the opening cutscene, dad is never mentioned, you know? For this is just an example of like part of how you put together the story. Dad is never mentioned in this in the opening cutscene. He's pretty much never mentioned in the endings except for like a couple pretty briefly, but there is an item called Dad's Key that is only found in secret rooms. So you like rarely find it. And it's really weird because Dad is never mentioned, you know? But now there's this item that's in the secret room that you find. And so just stuff like that, you kind of start to put together the whole story, you know?
May I ask what happens in Dad's like? Does it allude to more story about where Dad went, who he was, what he did?
Not really.
So,
Really all that you really understand about Dad is that he's gone, and there's very little mention of him. But that is story. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like the fact that his item is only found in a secret room sort of implies that like we don't talk about Dad. You know what I mean? And like that story, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's very bizarre the way that like like a lot of the story you just kind of
You know what that kind of
before
reminds me of? Sorry, I was just gonna say, you know,
Mhm.
kind of reminds me. You've played Portal, right?
Mhm.
you know how you're going through Portal and then there will be just one area that you feel like you can see something and then you feel like you're not supposed to get there and you get out of bounds of the level and you find out that there's like this hole where this other person survived for X amount of days with like, tally marks scratched on the wall and the cake is a
Yeah.
lie and all that stuff. That's kind of like the same thing. Like you get like a little bit of a bonus in a hidden area and you're like, "Ooh, interesting. Story that is introduced but never explained." So now
Yeah.
you're left to theorize. I see what you're talking about now.
And I really like it too because in like Portal, it's a lot of it is environmental, while in Isaac, a lot of it is in game mechanics. The way that it does it, you know.
Oh, explain
Um,
that, please.
well, that's kind of what I mean about the secret room kind of thing, you
Okay.
know, and like how certain items are secret room, right?
I thought you
And
meant
then
like
the
how
whole
how a certain gun would fire some way or something.
well, I also talked about the whole like angel versus demon room mechanic earlier about how like you have to pay life or soul in order to get devil items while angel items are free, but you can only get angel items if you ignore the devil rooms and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's like game mechanics that are giving you story, you know what I mean? And then yeah, so and then the other thing is like the different characters and the way that like for example so all of the different characters are technically Isaac, just different like personas of his or different like
Yeah.
it's sort of him dressing up, you know? But then one of the characters the amount of starting so the health your health in the game is represented by hearts like Zelda, and that idea of them being hearts though, the amount of health that each character starts with is like how much Isaac likes that part of him
Oh.
or that persona, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like so that's what I mean. It's a game mechanic. The amount of life you have is a extremely relevant game mechanic, but it's also used to give you this weird hint of a story, you know what I mean?
I like that.
Like for example, one of the characters is Judas, which is like Isaac's it's like his anxiety about the idea that he's betrayed his mom, you know? Hence Judas is that character, and that character starts with only 1 HP. He's got like the least HP in the game of any character that and so stuff like that like and so yeah, it creates this really weird thing where it's like even though you're only told very little story, after you've played a bunch of it, you sort of like have absorbed a lot of the story, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah,
Um
I dig games that tell you what you wouldn't expect to in like just happenstance, like environmental happenings.
Yeah. And so so the with this expansion, so what I noticed about like the difference between Anti-Birth and now Repentance, cuz again Anti-Birth was the fan mod, and then Repentance is a port of Anti-Birth made official but also with a bunch of stuff added. And so in Anti-Birth, if you went down the alternate harder path, you would find these knife pieces. In Repentance, it's made into a puzzle. I don't know if I should. I'm not gonna spoil how you do the puzzle, but it's. I kind of want to because it's really fucking cool. But basically, it's like it's like what I was saying, where I think Ed McMillan is like such a genius game designer, and so like it's really cool to see now the way that like Anti-Birth, this really ambitious and cool fan mod, like inspired him to do more with Isaac in the form of Repentance. And what he did with the Anti-Birth stuff is so cool. Like so the way that you find these knife pieces now are like these puzzles that he's put in, or one of them's a puzzle, one of them is like an actual action sequence that you can unlock after you do the puzzle. It's like the first knife piece is a puzzle that's really cryptic and really cool. And it adds like this layer of early game that is really interesting. Where there's like some as you're as you're doing the puzzle that you need to do to get the first knife piece, it's also like this really heavy risk reward thing where let's just say the more time that you spend in the puzzle, you can get a couple more items out of it and stuff, but it's really risky because you're at close risk of death while you're in the puzzle area, you know? So it's like now that part of the game has this like really cool risk reward that wasn't there before. And then if you do the puzzle, then the next floor has this action sequence to get the next knife piece. And it's like nothing else that I've ever seen in Isaac. It's actually like a running through several rooms quickly with something chasing you, and it's like an action thing that is really dope. So yeah. So that kind of stuff, plus the new characters, have made me super into Repentance now, and I'm all about it, and I've been playing mostly that.
I feel like I need to play this game now. I can't believe you've put so many hours into that game.
It's so good. I don't know how someone gets into it now, though, which is kind of an issue that I imagine. Just that when I started playing the game, it was on Flash, and there were like 100 items in the game, you know, and now there's like 400 or 500, you know? So it's like, if you were to start playing the game now, I'd be really interested just to see what it's like, to see what a new player would think of how big it is, you know? Because for me, it was kind of small, and it's been growing over the last what? 7 years, it's been 8 years, it's been growing.
You've just proved Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, though, because you want to see me now as a new player's experience, but you've now given me this context of, oh, it's much bigger than it used to be. So I'm going into it with a headspace of, yes, this is what it is. This is my only experience of it. But it could be different like it used to be. Damn it, they don't make games like they used to.
Well, one thing you could do, and I would be even more interested in this, is you don't have to get the expansions right away. You can just buy The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, right? Okay. And that doesn't have any of the expansions. And I wonder...
Oh, that removes the items? Like the other items out?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, I do wonder how much of the balance changes are still in Rebirth, though. You know what I mean? Oh. Like I mentioned last week, or whenever I was last talking about Isaac, I mentioned that like they changed the gold chest pool to be a lot better now. You know, I wonder if that recursively affects Rebirth if you don't have Repentance. I'm not sure. I hope so, though, because I don't know, they made it better.
Is there any website still hosting the original Flash version?
Oh yeah, well you can just buy the Flash version on Steam still.
Oh, okay.
It's like it's $5 or something like that.
Oh wait, didn't you say it ran at like 12 frames a second though?
Yeah, the dude, it's not super good, the Flash game anymore. Yeah. I mean, it's worth $5 to play it for a minute, you know, and just to kind of see what it's like. But once you get frustrated with it and you're like, this kind of sucks, then go to Rebirth.
I've never heard of anyone who would pay $5 to play a 12 frame per second game and say it's worth it.
I mean, I played it for like 500 hours when it was the only Isaac. But anyway, so yeah, there's that. The other thing I've been playing, though, and I want to get to this because I'm finally talking about a retro game. I've been playing Shin Megami Tensei 2, and it's great. Yeah, it's great. It's pretty cool.
Could do a real deep dive in that, or we're just going to say, yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, I'll give you the brief talk about it, which is that so originally there was Megami Tensei and it was on Famicom, and then there was Megami Tensei 2 on Famicom.
Is that an Enix property?
No, it's Atlas.
Oh, it was Atlas back then too. Still, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Then there was Shin Megami Tensei on Super Famicom, and then there was Shin Megami Tensei 2 on Super Famicom. Then... And at this point, the U.S. had never heard of Shin Megami Tensei before. Then, on the PS2, there came out Shin Megami Tensei 3, which I don't know what it was called in all regions, but I think in Europe it's called Lucifer's Call or something, which is really sweet. But in the U.S., it's called Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne.
And that's the third game.
That is 3. So I want to play these games in the US in English, right? Which the only like official, if I'm right, I think the only like official English release of Shin Megami Tensei is on iPhone or
Oh,
something like that.
whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Well, not cool, but
and Megami Tensei 1 and 2 just don't exist.
fuck.
And I'm not sure about the status of Shin Megami Tensei 2. So luckily, there are really cool people that are also really smart and speak multiple languages that have translated these games for us. So if you go to good old romhacking.net, you can get patches for these games to play them in English. And so one little note about it is that so Megami Tensei 1 and 2, actually, they did like a Mario All-Stars kind of thing with it, where they remade 1 and 2 and packaged them together for Super Famicom. And so that's the version I played of Megami Tensei 1 and 2, was the Super Famicom upgraded version.
Okay.
Now, here's what's kind of weird about it, though, was that package came out after Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 came out for Super Famicom. So I played technically the last Super Famicom game that they did for Megami Tensei, which was the remake of Megami Tensei 1 and 2. And it was awesome. Loved them, right? Then going to Shin Megami Tensei was like a step back in like quality of life and how good the game looked and that kind of stuff, because now it's the first Super Famicom game they made, you know? So that was kind of weird and jarring. SMT1 had some issues that made it a little hard to get through. Like,
let me ask this. All I know about Shin
okay,
Megami Tensei, or Megami Tensei, is that it is the umbrella universe for the Persona franchise. But
yeah.
Persona can almost be considered entirely different because of how irrelevant it is to the story of Shin Megami Tensei. Am I getting this right? Like, is it to the point where it's like, that's just the universe that we're in? Here's the high school, and then here we are. That's Persona?
So it's not even the universe. This is a good thing that you asked, because I was starting to get too nitty-gritty before, like, what this series actually is.
Yeah.
So Shin Megami Tensei is a series of video games, okay? Cool, we got that. Now there are spin-offs of it. So Persona, as well as Digital Devil Saga, Devil Summoner, Devil Survivor, what are some other ones? There's other ones too that I can't remember right now. These are all spin-offs of Shin Megami Tensei that do not take place in the same universe. They just have a lot of the same stuff in them.
Oh, so it's Final Fantasy like. There's chocobos in every Final Fantasy, but
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Like, so for example, like, all of the demons in so Shin Megami Tensei is a game, or just Megami Tensei. It is a game where the idea is that demons they're in the world now. Demons and angels. Well, actually, they're all demons. They're all demons. They are like in the world, and shit's getting kind of fucked up. But this computer programmer has made a computer program that allows him to talk to demons. So, with the ability to talk to demons, he's able to, like, make pacts with them and all that. And then the computer is also able to then digitize the demon and store it in the computer to then summon later.
It's Digimon.
So what you actually get out of that is the first Megami Tensei is a first-person dungeon crawler where you get into fights, and when you get into a fight with a demon, you can fight it, or you can talk to it, and it's gonna say things like, "You're pretty fucking ugly, aren't you? And you can say like, yeah, or fuck you, you know?
Yeah.
And if you say fuck you, the demon might be like, "Oh, you've got some spunk. I like that." You know? And then you can be like, "Be my demon." And he'll be like, "Okay, but give me $35." You know? And you're like, "All right, you can have $35." And he's like, "Okay, that's not enough though. I also want a magic stone."
You put
And
the
you're like,
decimal
"Okay."
in the wrong place. It's supposed to be 350.
And so right and so then you give him the magic stone, and he's like, "Okay, well, thanks for all the shit, see ya," and then he leaves, and you're like, "Fuck." And that's the game in a nutshell. But here's the thing though, is uh, if you do properly negotiate, then you get the demon in your party, and now you fight with the demon, and it's in your party. So it's like, yeah.
So Megami Tensei versus Phantasy Star 1. What's the difference? First person dungeon crawler RPG. What was the difference visually and mechanically?
Well, visually, it's that all of the demons that you're fighting, a lot of them are inspired by like several different like mythologies, you know. So you've got like Oni in there, you know, and then you've got like, well, it's hard to, I don't know a lot about this shit, so it's a little hard to get into specifics, but like Beelzebub and you know.
It's very hell centric from what I understand because it's
Yeah, but well, there's also a lot of angels. There's like, you know,
Well,
the
yeah.
like power and principality and an archangel, you know, all of these things. I'm avoiding saying the big ones because they're actually characters instead of just like random demons that you fight.
How does the game okay, without spoiling it obviously. But how does the game handle angels? Does it handle them in like the buddy Christ like normal sense of, oh, I got a halo and I got wings and I'm wearing a big white dress, hey, I'm an angel? Or is it like, from what I understand, like cryptic, like Christian mythology, real angels where like if a human were to actually see one, their like eyes would just explode out of their fucking head?
So here's how it is. They are demons, technically.
The angels are?
Yep. So all the angels and all the demons are all demons. I think partly maybe because well, I don't know. It's one of those things where like in Japanese the word demon kind of means something different than it does in the US, you know? Because under Christian rules, angels and demons are two opposing things, you know?
Yeah.
But in this, they're all demons, right? However, angels are law aligned, light and law aligned demons, while like demons are chaos aligned demons. And so those are two opposing ideologies. And so
it's kind of like Elder Scrolls.
I'm not sure because I haven't played much Elder Scrolls.
Aedra and Daedra, they're all like demons, quote unquote, but some are lawful and helpful, and then some are evil.
Right. So, here's the thing though, is that it's not really good and evil, it's law and chaos, right? So the whole idea of the game is that God and the angels are law, and they want to tell you how to live. They promise utopia, right? And everyone will be happy under their utopian rule. However, it's very lawful and you have to live their way, you know? They make the law, and if everyone lives this way, it's a utopia. Meanwhile, chaos demons are like, fuck that, just do whatever the fuck you want, you know? And they're very against that type of like lawfulness, which I think is really cool because, you know, that's sort of a lot of like what actual religious mythology is like, you know, where like Lucifer and Satan, right, isn't necessarily evil, right? He's not just bad. He simply wants you to question God. He wants you to think for yourself. He wants humanity to sort of be separated from God and be its own thing, right?
A very
Which,
individualist kind of character.
yeah, so like, critical thinking, questioning authority, anarchy, and that
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? Which, of course, like from the perspective of someone who believes in God and heaven, that is evil, right? Of course. But from like an outside perspective, those are the opposing ideologies. And that's what's brought into the game. In SMT, you meet God and you meet Lucifer, and these are the things that are happening. And depending on whether you choose lawful or chaotic things throughout your quest in the game, there are 3 different endings on each of the games. There is a law ending where you create God's utopia. There's a chaos ending where everything is just fucking nutso. And then there's a neutral ending also where you are for humanity, and you're not lawful or chaotic, and you're a happy medium.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the world that you're in. So you're talking to these demons. These different demons have these different ideologies. You run into the different demons that are doing these different things. Like a big story is that like the lawful demons, they want to create the 1,000-year kingdom, but then which is the utopia I was talking
Yeah.
about, right? But then everyone else is like, no, they're gonna kill everyone who isn't part of the, who doesn't abide by the law and that kind of thing. So we can't
the
do
game
that.
forces you into a moral struggle too.
Yeah, yeah. Right. But the neutral option is there,
Oh,
where
okay.
you can just say no to everybody, basically.
Fuck off, all of you.
Yeah. So like for some, like I think it's pretty brilliant. Like story wise, it's really cool to be in this world with this kind of subject matter. I personally think it's really interesting, especially given that you have the choices to do the different things and have the different endings and stuff, which is really cool for Super Famicom, like or for original Famicom for the first couple of games.
Yeah.
So yeah, so actual gameplay is, the first person dungeon crawling, and when you get into battles, you can either fight or you can talk. And so talking to the demons, I mentioned that you can recruit them, right? And then they become on your party, and then you can fight with them. You can also just talk to them just to get them to go away, a lot of the time. So it's really interesting. Like you can, like, the main character doesn't get any magic spells. So intelligence doesn't seem like it would do anything at first for him, because he doesn't have magic spells to cast, while for the other character, intelligence dictates how much MP she has and what spells she has and how powerful they are. But if you raise your main character's intelligence, he gets better at talking. So theoretically, you could put all your points into intelligence and just talk your way out of all the fights, while not really having any strength.
Also, something
So
I've always wanted to do in Elder Scrolls. All the
yeah,
points into charisma, nothing else.
yeah. So I really like all of the choices that the game has as far as like how you play through it, and then the game also does some other really fucking nutso stuff that is really interesting and unique. For example, I mentioned that your main character is a computer programmer, and it's this computer program that allows him to talk to demons, right? That means that if your main character is dead or paralyzed or something like that, and you're just running around with, he's in the party, but he's dead or paralyzed, but you still have the girl main character, who's the magic user, that means you can't talk to demons during that time. You can't talk to demons. You can't summon demons out of your computer because you can't use your computer. Even the game has an auto map, because it's a first-person dungeon crawler, so you can bring up like the grid paper map of what you've explored. You can't access your map
Oh,
if your main character is dead or paralyzed
damn.
because he can't use the computer. you know? And like just weird, specific nutso stuff like that, I think is so cool.
Hmm.
Where it really gets you immersed, you know? And
Yeah.
it's just interesting that they have the balls to do that kind of thing, you know? So yeah, I've been really liking the series. I'm on Shin Megami Tensei 2 right now, which I like a lot. I like it more than Shin Megami Tensei 1. Um, at this point, I would say the remakes, the Super Famicom remakes of Megami Tensei 1 and 2 have been my favorite, and then probably SMT2 and then SMT1
Where
so
did the
far.
remakes? What system of the remakes for?
Super Famicom. It's kind of like Mario All Stars, where
Oh, okay.
they remade the two Famicom ones, upgraded them, put them into a single package on Super Famicom.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, really cool games, and I've been really liking it. Oh, one thing I'll say is that so the Megami Tensei was the first person dungeon crawler, right? They all have first person dungeon crawling, but only the first one is always that, where it's like the world map is just like the tower, and then there's some ground, and then another tower, right? And it's just all dungeons all the way down, you know? But the Megami Tensei 2, they introduce an actual world map, you know, where you go out into the world, and then now it's an overhead view, and you're a little dude walking around, and you walk into the city. But okay, now the city's back in first person, you know? So yeah, so that's kind of cool that they, you know, you see the advancement over time if you play them in order and stuff.
You mentioned the when you were going through how the alignment system works and how the game forces you into mental conflicts and all that sort of thing. I was actually thinking about the game like the modern Persona and not
Hmm.
Shin Megami Tensei 1 or 2. Um it's interesting that you get that complexity in an early SNES game or, at SFC or whatever. Because what you were saying made it sound like the what I would imagine modern Persona to be like, except you didn't really name any like high school tropes or anything that would give it away. Because in Shin Megami Tensei, I'm assuming you're sword and board also with computers. Like it has nothing to do with a high school thing at all. Just in a universe of the same demons and angels, I guess.
Correct. Like the first game, you've got a sword, and then your buddy is a magic user. The second game, I think it was the second game, but it might have not been until Shin Megami Tensei. I don't exactly remember, but they introduced guns, so you have swords and guns.
Quick
So it
question on that,
is.
actually. You mentioned your buddy is the magic user.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of games, especially from that era, where you are not just the normal sword and board hero, right? What? How many games have there been where you, the direct first-person controllable person, is the magic user of the party? There's not a
It's
lot.
a good question. It depends on how you want to play. Cause yeah, these games don't allow you to be. Cause if you do intelligence, it's just your negotiation abilities.
Ah,
You
damn it.
know, because yeah, your main character just doesn't learn spells or have MP. Intelligence is purely for his talking skills, right? But I'll get into that in a second though, because so like, yeah. So Persona is a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei.
Yep.
So you might ask, how are they related then? So all of the demons that you fight and meet and all that, who are just demons walking around and you run into them in Shin Megami Tensei, those are what they use for personas in Persona.
Oh,
So
cool. It's damn. This is more and more like Final Fantasy. The more I think about it.
yeah, so the idea in Persona is that now you are a bunch of edgy high school students, and you learn that you have the powers of personas, right? But your main character is special. He has lots of personas.
This is also
Um,
JoJo's.
he's got lots of personas, as in he can like all of the other characters, they just have one persona, you know, and it's just some demon from Shin Megami Tensei. But then there's a whole smorgasbord of all the other demons, and your main character is able to equip one of them at a time. And the really cool thing, and this answers your question, is how Persona works is your character themselves does not have stats. They inherit the stats of whichever persona they have equipped, and you can change personas every turn in battle should you choose to.
Huh.
So you can very easily be the magic user in Persona.
That makes sense then. Okay. It all just depends on which persona you want to take over. That's pretty cool then. I like the way I that handles it in a really good way then. Because
Yeah, it's
I'm still longing for like the thing that I didn't get when I loaded up Elder Scrolls Oblivion for the first time and found out, wait a minute, I can make my stats to be like a healer. I can focus on recovery spells. I can heal other people. The game is never going to give you like the traditional like, hey, you got a friend in your party who's a tank and you got DPS and you can actually sit back and heal and be super helpful. No, it's never going to do that. It just
well,
makes it so you can heal yourself and like maybe a temporary ally for like a little bit better.
I'm thinking of a few more examples here. So old Final Fantasies, you totally can, but part of that is because none of the characters in Final Fantasy 1 through 3, none of the characters are the main character. All 4 are just the 4, right? But in Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6, and by that I mean only Final Fantasy 5 because that's the one with the job system.
Yep.
You can be magic on Butts or whatever his name was in your particular translation of it. Another good example though is Xenoblade Chronicles. So in Xenoblade Chronicles, this one's a little different. This is kind of like how the Tales games do it also. In Xenoblade Chronicles, as well as in the Tales of games, the main character is the main character, and he does his thing, or she does her thing, but you can choose which party member you play as.
Love it. That's a great thing that I do love about this game here, Tales of the Abyss. A lot of the characters are super annoying, and so you don't have to play them, and you can hear their dialogue less because you can set yourself as like whatever character you want is like the head of the party. Like you know how if you play Final Fantasy VII, you're always going to be like Cloud. I want to say I don't unless
Yep.
did they have it to where if you put like Tifa in the first slot, she becomes the person? I think they did, where she becomes the person walking around.
There is a scripted sequence where you play as the other characters,
Yeah.
but I think I want to say during the parts where Cloud is in the party, he has to be in the party.
Yeah, so like on the world map, I want to say, I think there's instances where Cloud will be dead, obviously, but you're Cloud walking around. It's kind of like that in the Tales games, where if you just select that character who you want to be, you'll be the person in real life, so you can hear their dialogue interactions, and it's a lot more relieving for bad voice acting.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too because the different characters around town say different things to you depending on who you are, and you can actually get more like information that way and that kind of thing.
Or items.
Yeah. Yep. So that's a cool thing
Mm-hmm.
that those games did. And so yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles, very similar thing. You choose which character you play as. And so like in battle, you can just be the healer if you want, just like you're saying. So yeah, cool thing there. But yeah, I've been playing Shin Megami Tensei 2. I really like it. It's the fourth, Megami Tensei 1, 2, then Shin Megami Tensei 1, 2. So I'm on the fourth of 4 of these like old school first person dungeon crawling ones. Because the next one is going to be Nocturne on the PS2, and that's going to be a lot different, but I'm super excited for that one also. Because there was this other spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei for PS2 called Digital Devil Saga, and it is one of the best JRPGs I've ever played. So it makes me very excited to play the other SMT PS2 games now. Well, also because Persona 3 and 4 were also on PS2, and those are 2 more of the best JRPGs I've ever played.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, I didn't even consider until after you just said that, but Shin Megami Tensei 2 is on the Super Famicom, aka SNES, and then the next one is on PS2, like all the way over a decade later. Like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Well, I guess if you think about it in modern terms, like game companies do that all the time. But then if you think about it, Revelations Persona released on PS1. So Persona took the new, like, that was where Atlas, I guess, chose to go.
Yeah, Persona 1 and 2 were on PS1.
Oh, I thought
And
just
then,
one was.
Yep, and then PS2 is where we got Nocturne or Shin Megami Tensei 3, and then that's also where we got
Persona
Persona
3.
3 and Persona 4. Hmm.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then we didn't get Persona 5 until PS4. Now it did come out on PS3 also, but it wasn't until the PS4 was out.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna say. I was like, wait a minute. I know there's Persona on PS3 because there's also that fighting Persona game on PS3 that my friend Nikki has. Apparently, that thing is just
Yeah.
gonna be so expensive as the years come by. It's already expensive.
Yeah. And right, I didn't bother mentioning it also, but technically there's actually 2 Persona 2s on PS1. That game released in 2 parts. There was Innocent Sin and then Eternal Punishment. So yeah, part 2 was a 2-parter.
Interesting. Not in the same disc case. It's just a separate game.
Right, and to make it extra annoying, the US only got the second half. Yeah.
Why?
Well, at first on PS1. Then, when they remade the Persona games for the PSP, we got the first half.
I think this is where that company called Working Designs comes in. Because I think they were responsible for us getting a chunk of this Atlas stuff, I want to say, from Japan.
Were they?
I
know Working Designs did Alundra, and...
I'm just spitballing, or not. I'm guessing here.
Were they also the Lunar people?
I do think they did what Lunar Story or something like that.
Silver Star Story.
Lunar Silver
or
Star,
something.
yeah.
Dude, quick aside, Lunar Silver Star Story, like in the fancy big collector's box for PS1, I see a copy of that in every single retro game store that I walk into.
I never.
And
see that.
It's always there.
Oh, because
every store has one.
That's because no one's gonna buy it for what they want. Not unless you're. I feel like only eBay sales take place at that price level.
Is it? I've never even asked the price on it. I just noticed that they all have it.
I don't know the actual price on it. I just assume obscure JRPG in a retro console, which will always work no matter what because it didn't need system updates and shit like that. I know that shit's gonna go through the roof, especially when they're low print, which is what Working Designs kind of did. They made things that were low print, and they brought them to like Canada and by extension the U.S.
One other neat thing that Working Designs did was they printed their games with like different disc arts. So like Alundra, for example, has like 8 different disc arts, which makes the games extra collectible. You know.
God, I hate that.
I know, I kind of hate it from like a collector's standpoint, but I love it from an artistic standpoint.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, one of I think my favorite set of Pokemon trading cards I have is the full set of like, I think it's like 15 or 16. It's like Pokemon Adventure or Vacation Island or something. It came out right before Pokemon the movie 2000. So like if you collect the cards in order and put them in a binder 3x3, you know, their art goes across. It's continuous. Is that a word? It goes continuous. It goes all the way on one side. And each 3 Pokemon cards is one single mural, and there's like 4 or 5 different murals of the different parts of the island. It's a really cool set.
That sounds pretty cool. I was so disappointed when I was younger that the pieces of Exodia didn't do that in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Didn't like explode in light, you mean? And then like
No, they didn't. They weren't continuous or contiguous.
Yeah, you have to place them in a certain way for them to be like that.
They don't do it. I'm telling you. Look
stupid.
at the Exodia pieces. They don't work together.
That bothered me when I found that out too, though.
Yeah.
See,
so anyway.
That's relevant, though. We have these discussions because we get pissed about shit no one else cares about. But I would say video games that I think I might have lost the plot. It might be that hour.
All right. Well, yeah, speaking of that hour, I got to get to bed pretty soon here.
Me too. We're old.
But there we go. It was a good discussion. I think, We had a good discussion on controllers. I enjoyed our what we play in discussion as well.
Can I suggest the topic for next week?
Yeah.
It's one I think you and I both could probably talk about ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm.
CRTs.
Just talk about some CRTs.
We could talk about everything CRT retro game related, display, input, whatever.
I think that would be a good idea.
'Cause
to
I
really like to set the stage as far as like the retro game and shit that happens around here.
Yeah. And I'm a glutton for punishment. And I have a bone to pick with CRTs right now, even though they are my favorite way to play retro games, obviously. Got a serious bone to pick with them, and I'll talk about it then if you want to do that.
What a cliffhanger. We'll hear about it next time.
What a cliffhanger.
But yeah, and also if you guys have any suggestions for topics, you can either, if you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment. Otherwise, you can email us. I have neglected to mention this the entire time so far out of any episodes, but you can email us at twogrumpydickheads@gmail.com. That's two spelled out, TWO. twogrumpydickheads@gmail.com. Send us, if you want. We might not read it, though. I don't know if either of us actually read the emails that come in there.
We see them on accident when we use Google Drive, so.
Yeah, that's true. So we will see them. Also, my phone might go off if I get one, so...
if you need to get to Dasher's phone immediately, email us at twogrumpydickheads. So I would say I wasn't even aware that we were going to monitor that, but yeah, if you want to email us that's too good. And when I came up with that name, I was so amazed that Google A let it happen and B it wasn't taken. That
I think I suggested it, but as a joke.
Oh yeah,
and then you actually went and did it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it went. And I put it in, and then I was like, "What the fuck?" But yeah, I think you're right. I think we should probably capitalize on that a little bit more. We should use that.
Well, yeah, that is the email address for the podcast, so you can email it if you'd like. Yeah, but I mean, it's fucking 2021. You can just DM us on Twitter also.
Exactly.
So, there's a million ways to get a hold of us if you have questions or comments or ideas on what to talk about next time. So, for now then, thank you, Knox. I'm Dash. You're Knox.
I'm Knox. Thank you, Dash.
Have yourselves an excellent day and week and whatnot, and we'll see you next week.
Later.